I will open the Blackstone-Millville Regional School District School Committee for Thursday, October 22nd. If we could rise for the pledge, please.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Introduction of members.
Wendy Greenstein, Blackstone.
Tara Larkin, Millville.
Steve Tringali, Millville.
John Wozniak, Blackstone.
Griffin Riley, student representative.
Eric Eisner, student representative.
Georgette Jarrett, Blackstone.
Jane Reggio, Millville.
Dave Thompson, assistant superintendent.
Alan Himmelberger, superintendent.
Erin Banaco, Millville. And I will open our first public forum. If there's anyone that would like to speak, you can come to the table here. I do believe we do have another public forum after our main discussions. Okay. Moving on to student representatives. Thank you.
All right, so the ending of fall sports is coming up soon. The regular season for all sports is October 31st, Halloween. So all games have to be made up by then, and I don't believe we foresee any problems with makeups for games, so I think everything should be all set by then. And some teams actually still may make playoffs. A few games left until the end of next week, so we'll see about that.
And as both Eric and I know, college applications are kind of taking over the lives of BMR's seniors. The application processes are underway. Some students have November 1st deadlines or early November deadlines. There are also deadlines around early January or some even in between then. But our guidance department has been very good about keeping students updated and on track with info sessions arranged by guidance where schools will actually come to BMR and speak to any students who sign up. To kind of celebrate and keep students motivated, we held a college sweatshirt day on a Friday where all students could wear college sweatshirts in school, kind of show their pride, to show their ambition. Mr. Goulet in guidance has been sending out newsletters with local college fairs, local college information sessions, and has been very helpful to all students about anything they need to know, whether it be for NCAA eligibility, the application in general, specifics. BMR's guidance department has been absolutely fantastic. The AP coordinated program we have this year with our added classes, which we've discussed, the Mass Insight program has allowed us to take many new opportunities, one of which is AP Saturday sessions, which is where students from BMR will actually go to other schools locally and kind of study their AP, do review, get to connect with other students who are having similar problems, learn a lot about it, and those will be occurring on Saturdays for math, science, and English AP classes. And this isn't just a day all about learning, but there's also going to be raffles for students who register early, winning big ticket prizes such as iPads, and just an opportunity to network with students and really work together and just get a different opinion, maybe from a different teacher, a different school. As far as standardized tests, seniors also just got their SAT scores back, but on the younger level, PSATs were just recently taken by all sophomores at BMR, which is a fantastic opportunity that will really prepare them for standardized tests in the future and just kind of what college holds for the rest of high school. Juniors who chose to take the PSAT also took them that day. In other extracurricular news, 2 student political organizations were actually started this year. The BMR Young Republicans and the BMR Young Democrats. Young Republicans having their first meeting this morning. These are not affiliated with specific candidates, but more to kind of teach students about political involvement, ethics, and the importance of voting and really getting involved in not just your local community, but also on the state and national levels. For the National Honor Society, 2 main projects have occurred this month. Soul Hope, the Party for a Purpose, is going to be coming up. And that's where students will use recycled milk jugs and water jugs and jeans to cut templates for shoes to be made in Ghana. And this will help younger people in Ghana kind of be employed making the shoes, but they will also make shoes to protect themselves from disease and infection. So it's really a win-win. The other initiative was the Character Counts Week, which schools all across the country celebrate. This was kicked off with a advisory activity coordinated with the school's advisory program Wednesday morning to kind of make helping hands that are going to be on display that really outline the pivotal points of character and some really good examples, with a discussion about the importance of character in life beyond high school and college, the workforce, military, and also just kind of bringing students into the world of character and really showing them that it is going to matter throughout their entire lives and why it's important to treat others with respect, integrity, and trustworthiness. Eric, with the senior class update.
All right, yeah, so senior class officers have been hard at work planning the rest of the year out. We've had a few small successful fundraisers, and next Friday, the day before Halloween, we have our Halloween breakfast, which is specifically for the seniors. This is kind of a cool day. All the seniors come in dressed up in their costumes, school appropriate, obviously, and a few awards are given out to most creative, things along those lines. We also have a dues drive coming up, and then the Yankee Candle fundraiser, which everybody seems to love. And then a quick update from the Student Council. Powder Puff is coming up next month, and then we also have our fall conference. And fall conference is our region, and we're going to take as many Student Council delegates who would like to go to that to just as many that want to sign up can go. And then we had our meeting last night, and that was the last chance for new members to join. And lastly, the state this year, so the State Student Council is partnering with the Special Olympics, so we have a few events coming up with Special Olympics and Student Council combined. And then Griffin with band.
Yeah, the band update. We have a lot of shows, and normally we do have a lot of shows, but more local areas, at least around the state of Mass and Rhode Island usually. Now we're kind of branching out because it's championship season, so to see the other groups in our division, really have to kind of fling ourselves pretty far. And that's actually starting October 24th and 25th, this coming weekend. October 24th is a double-header show with a morning show in Brookfield fairly early, and then that night we're actually making the haul to Southington, Connecticut. And that's going to be our first show where we really see other people in our group, and it'll really gauge the competition. The following day is Micah Finals. We actually qualified to be the last performance that night with the highest score, so we'll go on just before the UMass Marching Band, and that's our first finals performance. October 31st, Halloween, we have New England States, and that's in New Britain, Connecticut, and that's another show where we're going to be up against competition in our division. Following day, November 1st, is NESBA Finals in the stadium at Lawrence, Massachusetts, the same location as Micah Finals. And then lastly, our penultimate performance, the big one, November 7th through 9th is going to be our national championships trip. So that's where we really get our final score, and that's sponsored by U.S. Bands in the MetLife Stadium of the Jets and the Giants. Fantastic opportunity for students to play inside an NFL stadium. This is actually going to be followed by a New York City trip this year. As many of you know, there was kind of a Gator Bowl initiative to go down to Florida. It was a combination of interest and the price where that actually fell through. But thankfully for our very involved school and our fantastic administration, we were able to get a New York City trip arranged. And this is going to be like Broadway, very nice dinner, seeing Times Square at night, just the essentials of New York City. It's a really fantastic opportunity for students, and it's not going to have a price tag much higher than the original Nationals trip. So that was really an agreement everybody enjoyed, and everyone's looking very forward to that weekend.
Is it 100% participation for New York?
The New York City trip, the entire band will be going, yeah.
Any other questions for our student reps? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Great
Thank
job,
you.
Jeff. Thank you.
And moving on to consent agenda A. We have our warrants, use of facilities field trip requests, and minutes of meeting from October 8th. Do we want to do a full consent agenda, or do we want to do that? Preference?
We'll do them all together?
Okay.
Okay.
Any
Make-
questions on any part of it first? Go. Go, Steve.
I make a motion to approve the warrants.
Motion made by Steve, is there a second?
Second.
Second by Wendy, any discussion? Okay, All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Ayes have it. And moving on to the report of the superintendent.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Vanaco. The first item on the agenda is the presentation of the Superintendent's Award for Academic Excellence, and I'd like to go down to the microphone to present. Sounds good? So the best part of being a superintendent is recognizing student achievement. And the Massachusetts Association of School Superintendents presents an award to a deserving senior every year for academic excellence. And this is presented to a student who, throughout his high school career, has demonstrated the values, the core values that our schools and our district stands for and has achieved a consistent, stellar academic record. And this year, the award goes to Griffin Riley. And so I'd like to call up Griffin and his parents, please. So for those who watch every week, Griffin has been here before. I don't know if we have too many more awards left, but this one is the most prestigious award that we do give out, and I'll just read it briefly. Griffin Riley, having duly qualified under the standards prescribed by the Mass Association of School Superintendents, is hereby awarded this certificate of academic excellence. In witness thereof, the seal of the association and signature of the superintendent of schools are hereunto affixed. Griffin Riley, Certificate of Academic Excellence. Congratulations. So next we have the annual MCAS analysis and presentation. Again, I think I'll go down to the microphone so that we can go through this analysis. I think I have to ask everybody on the stage to go down to the first couple of rows so we can drop the screen to be able to put everything up on the board, on the screen. So just a bit of background, everyone knows that MCAS, the Mass Comprehensive Assessment System, has been around now since 1998. And I think everyone agrees that this particular test no longer is the best assessment for our students as to how they will get ready for college or career. And there's been a lot of politics, a lot of political action around what the next test should be, what it should look like. A couple of years ago, there was almost, I think, 46 states that were involved in 2 testing consortiums, the Smarter Balanced Assessment, the SBAC, and the PARC, the Partnership for the Assessment of Readiness for College and Career, of which Massachusetts was one of over 20 states. Due to, I think, the federal and state political arena, the consortium, both consortiums dwindled to now there's 7 states in the PARC assessments. And it appears that because of the the willingness of individual states to have their own input into their assessments, that on November 17th, the Board of Education will be voting for the next generation assessment. And we thought it was going to be between MCAS, as we know it, and the PARC assessments. And the Commissioner of Education on Monday threw out a third option, which was somewhere in between. It was taking the best of PARC, but not being involved directly in the PARC consortium, so that Massachusetts could then derive their best assessment. And so that's where we are as a state. It'll be interesting to see what the Board of Ed comes back with, whether they want to take PARC as it has been test run over the last 2 springs, or will they look to meet somewhere on that third option. Like every new assessment, the early scores may not represent what parents and students and educators would want them to represent. There is a learning curve. However, that same nervousness was also apparent in 1998, for those of us old enough. That was the same exact scenario that we're going through now. So there's a lot of questions about this year's MCAS. What does it mean? Is it valuable? Is it valid? I think certainly it's comparison data to prior years. I think that it is important to note and recognize where there are gains and where we have deficiencies, and still be able to work towards correcting them. I think obviously, as we have changed our curriculum to align with the Massachusetts frameworks and Common Core, that whatever the next assessment is, and no matter what it is called, that first year or 2 will have data that may not seem to be reflective of students' growth and achievement. So what I'd like to do is Dr. Thompson will take us through the overview, and then Loretta Braverman, our special ed director, will present our special ed information, and then probably our 3 principals of elementary schools, Dr. Haughey, Mrs. Desai, and Mrs. Brown, will speak on the elementary scores, and then Mr. Cameron and Mr. Dudek on the middle school and high school. Again, if we put aside all of the politics around what is the right test, what is the next test, and just simply look at the data, there is valid reasons to be able to see where we are, where we've been, where we need to go will probably be decided on November 17th by the Board of Ed. So let me turn this over to Dr. Thompson.
Thank you. Good evening. I'd like to go over the district results for MCAS from last year. This first slide looks at the whole district, and this is percentage of those students who scored proficient and advanced. And you can see, if you look, first here is ELA, math, and then science. And keep in mind that our numbers are kind of small, so 2 or 3 kids in one direction can actually be 1 percentage point. But you can see that the results are pretty consistent. There's not a trend of really rising or lowering. This, and I don't know why the numbers didn't get through, but this is our results versus the state's results. 2015 is over here. We don't have the state results for this year yet because half the districts of the state took PARC and the other half took MCAS, so the state has not come out because they've not finished analyzing the PARC results yet. So we don't have the state comparison, but this is 2015, okay, and this is overall all tests, okay? This is the state for 2014, BMR for 2014, state for 13, BMR for 13, 12 for the state, 12 for BMR, 11 for the state, 11 for BMR. So you can see that generally we score higher than the state. The other thing we looked at this year was the DART, or the District Analysis Review Tool. What that is that is a tool from the Department of Ed that compares our district to other similar districts based on population, funding, amount of low income, all those factors that make up our students. We are compared with, that's the wrong button. We are compared with BMR, Granby, Ludlow, Nauset Regional, which is out on the Outer Cape, Saugus, and STG, which is Southwick, Toland, Granville, another regional district. And you can see consistently, here is ELA, here's math, here's science. We are either in the top half or the top third of comparable districts. These last two here are growth scores. Keep in mind that normal growth is between 40 and 60 percentile points. BMR in ELA was a 50, and in math was a 50.5 or a 51.5. Hard to read from here, but definitely average growth. And what that means is a year's worth of growth in a year. Okay, looking at a longitudinal view, year by year, by grade. Here's grade 3. Okay, and you can again see that there really is not a lot of fluctuation. The numbers are staying kind of consistent. Okay, grade 4. I would like to point out something on grade 4. If you look right here, that's your advanced students. Okay, that's a huge jump. And I would put forth that we're in the third year of a literacy initiative, and due to the hard work of elementary folks, we're starting to see some benefits from that piece there on our ELA test. 5th grade, 6th grade here at the bottom. And again, keep in mind that these percentage points can be 2 or 3 kids in any one particular category or the other. Grade 7. Okay. Looking at grade 7, here we go. Grade 7, you can see a big jump there. One of our improvement goals last year was working on open response questions. I would suggest that we're seeing a little bit of results from that right here in our proficient category compared to previous years. It's a big jump from the last 2 or 3 years. And again, look at 8th grade. 8th grade had a pretty high special ed population, but still some good, especially with your advanced population right there. Compare what they would have done last year, the same group of kids, to 8th grade. This is our grade 10. Remember, grade 10 is a competency determination. You need to pass that test in order to get a high school diploma. And again, BMR has done, that's 97% of the students at BMR were advanced or proficient last year in ELA. Another thing we did this year is we looked at the students, the class of 2017, the class that took their 10th grade MCAS last year, and looked back at them through history. So this is them as 10th graders, 8th graders, 7th graders, 6th graders, and 5th graders. You can still see, some good growth here and some excellent results at the final end of that. The state will tell us that they're all different tests. They test different skills and different standards, but still, it's an indication of who's on track to being college and career ready. Okay, and you can see the growth there and the final product when they leave us and get their competency determination in 7th grade. Okay, looking at math, same setup. Here's 3rd grade. Okay, again, seeing some good bump here in your advanced category. Okay, math right here in 4th grade. Okay, pretty consistent. A little worrisome with the needs improvement right here, but an area we're definitely addressing. 5th grade, 6th grade down here. Okay, and if you want to look back 2015, 2014, that's the same group of kids, 2 different years. 5th grade there, 6th grade there. Okay. 7th grade and 8th grade. Here's our 10th graders, longitudinally looking back throughout the history, back from 2015 to 2010. Okay, again, you can see pretty high numbers at the end. And then looking at the class of 2017, the current juniors, where they have been on their journey from 5th grade 8th grade to 10th grade. Science. One thing about the science test that people don't always realize is that these science tests are asking these children to remember content that they're taught over 3 years. Okay, and that's a pretty long time to keep all those concepts active. They don't test every single standard that they've taught over 3 years. They choose which standards they test, and they differ from year to year. So those of us in the business would offer maybe some suggestions with science tests and consistency, but these are not always the same consistent tests. But you can see 4th grade, 5th grade here, 8th grade. So the 5th grade tests test all the science that they would have been taught in 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade. 8th grade tests from 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. Okay, multiple subjects. Life science, physical science, earth science over 3 years. So it's a pretty difficult test for these kids to keep all of that active. But then in order to get a high school diploma in the state of Massachusetts, they have to pass a science test in high school. For most of our students, that's biology, but it could be chemistry or physics. And you can see the last 5 years, looking at our science scores here. And again, pretty good results. Any questions from the committee, from the bird's eye view? Okay. Mr. Beardman? There you go. Cute little guy.
Good evening, Madam Chair, School Committee, Superintendents, and distinguished guests. This evening I'm going to talk to you about something that's near and dear to my heart, and that's, of course, special education. My presentation is focused on special education in relation to MCAS, the 2015 report card, and its relation to educational separation. The backstory is that Massachusetts has the highest rate of special education identification in the United States. There's been a lot of research, and in 2011, there was a huge study by the Department of Education which looked at a comprehensive review throughout the Commonwealth as to what's happening with special education students, and included in the presentation are the key findings. And basically what they found is that the degree to which a student with a disability is included in a classroom with non-disabled peers is substantially related to MCAS performance. Keep in mind that the performance of a school district's general education student is, on average, the strongest predictor of the performance of a district's special education student. In your packets, you will see some charts. And in those charts, we are focusing on the district in ELA of all grades and math of all grades. A close look will show you that in ELA, a percentage of the students with special needs demonstrating high to very high growth, and it breaks it down for AFM, Millville, the middle school, and the high school. As Dr. Thompson had said earlier, 1 or 2 students can make a huge difference in the percentages, and you will notice in Millville that 8%. There are reasons for that 8% that are understandable, that we understand and that we have looked at. And what you need to remember is that some of the students who factored into this 8% had extremely, extremely complex disabilities and learning needs. The second chart is also going to show you the district and the distribution of the math growth, where the percentage of students with special needs demonstrating high to very high growth, AFM at 39%, Millville at 42%, the middle school at 40%, and the high school at 60%. So as we advance forward, we need to consider the implications of strengthening the Blackstone-Millville Regional School District special education model. A balance needs to be struck between maintaining and enhancing the success that many of the students with disabilities are experiencing, as you just saw in those growth percentages within the district, but we also need to assertively address the current inclusion access. Of particular concern are problems identified in separation outside of the mainstream classroom. It's also known as 21st century segregation. Currently, out of 316 students receiving special education services, 221 students are receiving services in some form of a pull-out model whereby they are taken out of the general education classroom at some point during their school day. That's 70%. Yet research shows kids learn best when they are with their non-disabled peers. So, do we keep a status quo on student placement, or something needs to change to impact MCAS student achievement? With this in mind, I'm not recommending sweeping changes, but a mindful and strategic plan to improve our special education model as it currently exists within the district. So the improvement plan. The improvement plan looks at our related service providers intentionally embedding services within the classroom for increased generalization. Looking very closely in developing Tier 3 curriculum. An emphasis on literacy. More than 50% of the students on IEPs within the district have been identified as having a specific learning disability in the area of reading. We need to continue with ongoing professional development. We need to have more professional development and ongoing coaching with the co-teaching model using the 6 high-performance models that are out there. Looking at our paraeducators and how they're being used in the classroom so that they are really viewed and looked and utilized as instructional aids that have essential skills that are required for assisting students to access the curriculum. And we're actually partnering with the Fitchburg State University to come out and help us with the PD with our paras. And also strengthening our CPAC. As we all know as parents, there's so much of the learning that goes on at our dining room tables and in our living rooms and in our cars, and strengthening our CPAC is a very, very important mission and goal of mine. So that's the improvement plan for the special education to target our MCAS scores. Any questions on those? Yes?
Is there currently a special ed curriculum, the development of Tier 3 curriculum? What are we using now?
When I came to the district, what I heard is that the Tier 3 curriculum is this. I pull you out of the general education classroom, and I talk to you lower and slower. Or in my house with my dad, it was louder and the fist on the dining room table while I wasn't getting the math. It was louder and stronger in my house. So what are we doing? I'm basically conducting a special ed audit, a special ed autopsy throughout the district, and uncovering what are the things that teachers are using that we may not know about, that aren't on record. We had brought in Scholastic during our PD to look at Tier 3 literacy. Also looking at a few other programs to also bring in to develop our Tier 3 intervention. So we can have research evidence-based interventions. Any other questions? Sure. No, it's good.
The Millville numbers in particular, we talk about very severe special needs, but in their math, it's quite significantly different.
Yes. And I think that goes back to over 50% of the students who have disabilities within this district have disabilities in the reading the reading fluency, the reading comprehension. They're not the math disabilities, they're the reading disabilities.
So if you had to guess, would you guess that most of those students are pulled out during their general ed, ELA type class?
With a number like 70%, disappointingly so. And so what we are really looking to do is to strengthen those co-teaching models and embedding services in the classroom. You're welcome.
When you talk about 70% that are pulled out, say a typical kid is in inclusion most of the time, he gets pulled out for something, say speech. Does he get counted as a pullout?
He does, and he should get counted as a pullout because that,
He spends most of his time in the inclusion setting.
he does. However, think of the student who's on an IEP and receiving specialized instruction for speech. And we're taking that instruction out of the natural environment. We're working with that student in isolation, but then we're expecting that student to go back into the classroom and generalize those skills. Best practices today are saying that the speech services should be delivered in the classroom, and that speech person should be working with that teacher as a consult to help that student generalize those skills. So we're not working
The 7%, like what really was included in that 7%. Is that
at any time.
exclusively if they have to pull out for anything? Or?
No, at any time, if there is a student on an IEP, at some point during their day, they are being taken out of the general education classroom to receive their special education services, despite the fact that we know what best practice is saying, and despite the fact that we know what the research is also saying. So we need to look at how we can improve our delivery of services within the classroom, so that way that student can generalize those skills, and that student can become more successful in accessing the curriculum.
Are there any school districts that we compared ourselves to in the other previous slide that have are there any that have a 100% inclusion program that you're aware of?
Of course, but the trend and the movement throughout the state right now is to look at whether it's speech, whether it's OT, to embed those services in the classroom. And so, again, first year here, maybe 70 days on the job. There is a wonderful organization called PASS. PASS does a lot of the PD on how to embed those related services in the classroom. So that way, services are being generalized. Teachers are able to incorporate those interventions throughout the day, not just the 15, 20, 30 minutes throughout the cycle. And PASS is going out into the districts and showing districts how to bring those services into the classroom. Are we there yet in this district? You got to give me a little bit more time.
What reaction are you having from the general classroom teachers that you're trying to address?
What I'm finding, and I was speaking earlier about this, is that I'm finding that the general education teachers are craving and are looking for more tools in their toolbox. That the whole idea of 21st century segregation, they hadn't looked at it that way. And one of the things that I say is that all kids can learn, perhaps not on the same day and not in the same way, but all kids can learn. But we know they learn best in the general ed classroom, or as much as they can with typical non-disabled peers. And I think that's one of the things that public schools do better than anyone. And when we begin to look at families who are looking at out-of-district placements, and there's such a restrictive environment, and it's something that the public schools, I think, do far better than any other educational institution. It's our strength. It's what we do.
I'd like to feedback Jane's question and ask what kind of feedback you get from parents who already had their IEP in place for this year.
Right. And this is a process because IEPs run 3 years. So triannually, these conversations will come up where we can test to see if that student, if that child is ready to be taken out of the C grid, the most restrictive, and put in the B grid. But we don't make those decisions unless we have tested that child and we have received work samples and we have received parental input and also input from the team of teachers. So it is a very mindful decision when we start looking at going back into the B grid. We don't just say, oh, they're going to do better, let's just put them there. We really have to look closely at the evaluations. And what I usually say is we start with a student's strongest subject, like we just saw in this example with math. If the student needs to be in a sub-separate, maybe for the language-based, but the child really is strong in math, why not put him in an inclusion model math? Why does he have to be segregated the entire day? So we can push in as much as possible and maximize on that student's strengths. Then keep him segregated or isolated throughout the entire day.
Is there support in place with the regular ed teacher for the tier 1 and tier 2 before you get to that tier 3 curriculum? So that we're not identifying too many and we're trying to do the tier 1 and tier 2 before we get to that tier 3?
Absolutely. Absolutely, which goes back to the slide that said your special education population will only be as strong as your general ed curriculum. And that's where Dr. Thompson has, bringing in these programs and bringing in these evidence-based programs to be able to support teachers with tier 1, with tier 2. In the next coming weeks, I'll be going out into the buildings and I'll be looking at the RTI models. Exactly what is going on during RTI. And what is the data? Is it effective? The model that we're using, is it effective? What are the outcomes? And I hear sidebar conversations that the RTI has really helped a lot of struggling students not get to the point where they require an IEP. Well, that's wonderful as a sidebar conversation, but I want to see the data. I want to really see where is that happening, in what building, at what grade, in what subjects. With what team of teachers? This is not easy stuff. But when you think about it, especially at the high school level, and you look at science, and you look at the science MCAS, whether you are on one end of 495 near the Cape, or whether you're down the other end of 495 near Marlborough, you will hear educators say, when it comes to science, we don't have a co-teaching model. But we do have an expert, a content-certified expert in the delivery of science instruction, and yet that is the MCAS content area that kids are making the most growth. And why wouldn't they be? They're with a content-certified expert in that area. So if I have a disability in, let's say, math, and I'm in a sub-separate with a general educator, I'm missing out on the opportunity to be with that certified math teacher. We all have our areas of expertise, but by bringing kids out of the classroom, we're missing out on the expertise of that highly qualified math instructor who's now solely working with a special educator, who also has an expertise in modifying and accommodating, but perhaps not in the content, because that's not the certification. So, with parents, this is a process. There's a huge learning curve. Because when you think, if I pull my student out, they should be receiving a lot more attention, a lot more focus, less distractions. We would assume that my student would be making better gains. But what we see is that isn't necessarily the case. Any other questions?
What is your plan for CPAC?
I plan for CPAC. So, as many of you know, Osiris has developed our wonderful website, and we will be really looking at how to develop the special education page for that. I have reached out to the president of our CPAC, and I have, as I go into meetings and I meet with parents, I've just taken the show on the road, and I'm trying to drum up business for parents to become more actively involved. But what I'm finding is I think families need to know, well, where do you meet? When do you meet? How do I get involved? What can I do? What can I contribute? So we really need to really look at how we're going to build that. Because I do think I have parents who would be interested. No one will ever advocate for a child like a parent will advocate for a child. Ever. CPAC is essential in having our students make academic gains. Any other questions? Okay. Well, after the presentation, I'll be sticking around. If anybody has any questions or concerns, you can certainly ask me, or you can always send me an email. Thank you.
Good evening. Mrs. Desai, Dr. Hawley, and I, with a group of teachers, began our initial MCAS analysis. What we did was we identified general areas on skills that we saw overall as an area that we need to further address. But I do want to share with you that our MCAS analysis does not end with our MCAS improvement plan, because we're looking at general trends, we're looking at how students perform, but I think even more importantly, what we are taking a very close look at is student growth, because we don't want to lose sight of students as individuals and really take a look at their growth year by year. So that's really important, and that's what we need to take a look at. We, I think, want to celebrate our successes. You can walk into any classroom, pre-K through 5, and see incredible student engagement. We have seen such growth in the way we teach and approach teaching literacy. And I think I even commented last year about the rich discussions that are going on. We just had a day of literacy PD, and really sort of fine-tuning our instructional practices. So I think that we're making great gains, and I just want to say, and I think we all agree, that we're just really proud of all of our accomplishments and the amazing work that our teachers are doing. They are deeply embedded in professional development, both for literacy and math. And it's just a wonderful thing to see. So we'd like to start with our ELA MCAS improvement plan. Would you like to?
My eyes aren't the greatest, so please just bear with me. On K-2 ELA, we looked at the areas that had concern and wanted to kind of strengthen them in this way. So for key ideas and details, standards around reading, informational text, informational literature, we wanted the students to really produce relevant questions about literacy and informational text. And really a lot of this is driven off of the Teachers for Teachers professional development that our faculty, not only at JFK and AFM, but Millville Elementary, have been participating in for the last 3 years. Describing main ideas of literacy and informational text, as well as facts learned from informational text, are all key things we're looking for the students to do. This is a very student-centered approach to solving what it is they're working on in the area of literacy. To do this, the assessment that is most important right now in the process as we establish some fundamental and foundational assessment work that's formative is the Funtus and Pinnell pre-tests that are going on or have been concluded as of right now. Steps that we look at and will continue to look at throughout this academic year include response to intervention. Title I is offered at John F. Kennedy and AFM elementaries. Not Millville, we are not Title I eligible at this time. Targeted instruction and practice. Best practices are part of working forward. And again, I think the PD in year 3 around these literacy initiatives really has paid great dividends and done some really nice things for our faculty, staff, and students where it's become much more student-centered. They drive the work, they drive with their questions and their partnership and collaboration with one another, whether it be in kindergarten, grade 1, or grade 5. It doesn't matter. These are very student-focused practices, problem-based learning practices that they are really tackling and solving reading and addressing reading, areas of reading. The ability to cite evidence, use specific vocabulary, equally important. Referrals to the reading specialist are also part of our plan, and as well reading referral out to the building-based support teams. What I will tell you is our RTI blocks for the reading specialist prove to be very important, because what it does is it provides an opportunity for the reading specialist to kind of hone in and provide targeted support in areas of need, fluency, phonemic awareness with any student, as just a couple quick examples. So that's K to 2. On the 3 to 5, standards that came up, reading informational text and reading informational literature, again in 3 to 5, were key ideas and details were something we know we need to work on. Again, our students are doing very well, and being student-centered, these are the things we're looking for them to improve upon with this action plan. Identifying similarities and differences between 2 events and activities in an informational text, identifying main character, motives in a literary text, relevant questions about text, compare and contrast characters in a story, make inferences. This inferences is one key example. I have to say, I've seen some really powerful work going on in grades 3, 4, and 5, not only at Millville, but at AFM recently during the literacy workshops that Mrs. Brown mentioned. I was really impressed to see the kids on the floor working to solve problems and draw inferences. And it wasn't something where the teacher was chalk and talk. It was very much guide on the side where the students were trying to work out the problem. Very well done, very well structured, and it was modeled by the Tammy, who came out, and the specialist in the professional development consultant who was providing the support. So they were able to see the lesson modeled and then kind of go through and be coached in how to carry it off themselves as faculty. Very impressive work. Again, same approaches are being implemented here for our faculty, staff, and students in terms of next steps. Any questions on the ELA? Yes, sir.
I think I understand, right? Can you just explain this for the layperson what RTI means and what a tier 1, tier 2, and 3, maybe some of the assessments used to decide? I think that's just jargon for a lot of people who don't understand that.
Well, what we do is we have the Fountas and Pinnell, which is our benchmark assessment, and that identifies very specific areas of performance for our students. So we know right away if we have a student who is struggling, in what areas, in what skills do they need support, which then leads us to, and also your formative assessments. A lot of that, when you walk into a classroom, you will see students working in groups, teachers taking notes, listening in on conversations, and identifying that this particular student may have had some trouble with a compare and contrast, whatever the skill is for that particular group on any given day. So we're collecting a lot of data daily on students, and our RTI, our response to intervention, in all of our schools, we have a scheduled RTI block of time. It's 30 minutes, 5 days a week, during which time, and it can look differently at various grade levels. I can speak to what it looks like at grades 3 through 5. We identify either reading or math. So throughout the year, it's never just reading or just math. So we will take a look periodically and may decide for however many weeks we'll focus on math, however many weeks we may focus on certain reading skills. Students are grouped accordingly. So I can give you an example. Grade 3, we have some of our grade 3 readers who still need support with phonics and phonemic awareness. So this group of students comes together, And we have some Wilson certified teachers who will then support their phonics and deliver additional phonics instructions, because at grade 3, they're really reading to learn versus learning to read. But if we have students who are struggling, it certainly impacts that, yes.
If you have students who don't need an intervention, don't need to see the reading specialist or see work on phonics, what do high-achieving students do during that half hour?
Okay, there are groups of students who work with their readers' notebooks, and one of the things that we didn't share before is that we have really very comprehensive leveled reading book room now. So we have books at the appropriate reading levels. So even if we say we have high-achieving readers, what we can do is take a look at some of those more complex books and look at the same skills. So,
And is that what is happening, or that's what can happen?
well, it is happening and it can happen. So at this point in the year, you know, we're still getting to know students, and I know that we're working on groupings. So I think that we're in the very initial stages right now, and also for ELA, it took a long time to administer the Fountas and Pinnell. And the older and the higher grade level, the lengthier the time is to test them. So one of the things we're also looking at is, when is the best time to administer this? Do we assess all of our students at the beginning of the year? Is that really the best use of time for our students? So we are putting together a group of teachers, and we're going to be sitting and talking about what is our assessment timeline. Yeah.
So is it the expectation of the district that students are tested as of right now, pre and post, meaning the beginning of the year, whatever that is, and end of the year, to find out their levels?
Yes.
Is that what that's saying?
Yeah, that's what that's saying.
The expectation that all students are
Right.
are given the Fountas and Pinnell, the reading assessment, to
Right.
find out their levels
Mhm.
and to move forward.
Right.
And the second question I have is this kind of piggyback on what Jane said, is what does that RTI block look like for those students who don't need that targeted? This has been brought up, you know, a couple times throughout the years.
Right.
Targeting and bringing that rigor to that other population of students. So,
Absolutely.
you know,
So.
that is a concern because it is RTI in response to intervention.
Mhm.
So what does that look like? And I like the idea, but I'd like to see that through, you know, to fruition, to actually take place during that RTI intervention and bring the rigor up for those students as well as.
Do you want?
And that's all grade levels, K, 1, 2, 3,
Right.
4, 5.
And I do want to say this, and I absolutely agree with you. We need to meet the needs of all students, whether they're struggling or they need that extension and that enrichment. What I would say is we have spent a great deal of our time looking at our readers who are struggling. We have.
As most school systems.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, you know, when we are in year 3 of our literacy PD, you know, we're really working our way through this. We haven't in the past had resources. We've got resources now. So this is something that's a work in progress. We have made, I think, really incredible achievements. Do we have a long way to go? Absolutely we do. And we know that that is one area that we need to focus.
I'm sorry, could you ask your question one more time so I'm on the scene?
Like, I had two.
Yeah.
The first question was, is the expectation that all children are tested or given the assessment for
Yep.
Fountas and Pinnell?
That was, yeah.
But I think you answered my question.
Yeah.
I hope that they can. I know it's a long
Yeah.
process.
But the
So
second
K-
one was the one I was, so yes to the first, I knew that one, but the one I was trying to pay attention to.
The RTI response to
Yep.
intervention, I know we target, we target those lower readers, but what does that look like when you're
Yeah,
not?
good, that's a good, so I can only tell you what we're doing in here, and what's happening here, and what I've seen, and so we know a student after their assessment is coming in at a certain level, and we have, as Carol mentioned, as Mrs. Brown mentioned, levels that allow us to take the students forward and kind of challenge them, which is, I think, a really nice thing, and it doesn't matter who it is, you know, we're working very hard to have everyone provide RTI, so that If a student is an H and it's time for them to go to I or J in terms of their level, we continue to push them and start reading in the next series of readers.
So you see that happening in Millville?
That is happening in Millville. It's not, I think it is. It is happening. And the only reason I can say that is because I'm watching the students and I'm there. I mean, I'm watching them. So it's not perfect. One of the things that we are starting to think about doing and have just, come Monday, we're going to be creating our book rooms into 2 separate areas, because we have people on the first floor having to run upstairs to go get things that really should be on the first floor for them, because our PK through 3 are downstairs, and then 4 and 5 is up. But if we need to challenge and get a reading series above the students' reading level to kind of create some rigor for them, we can do that, and we have that ability now, which I think is huge.
And we also have to remember that a student who is a very strong reader, you find books at higher levels for them, the content of those books may not be quite appropriate. So we've got to be very mindful of that. So we can take some of the skills, character analysis, and they can apply it and just deepen their understanding and their questioning as readers.
And I also wanted to add that RTI at the lower grades, it looks very different than RTI for grades 3, 4, and 5. So keep in mind that the role of kindergarten, first, and second grade is to build that strong foundation. So when they're looking at the groupings and the teachers break up their RTI groups into different centers, they're grouping children by where you want to deepen and strengthen that foundation. And it might be one table where you're looking at fluency, another area where children are reading, starting to have discussions about what are you reading, what does this mean, how do you know this, what evidence do you see? And that starts in the lower grades, maybe not in the same terms I'm saying it, it's brought down to their level. One of the things that our consultants from the Teachers for Teachers PD have pointed out is that too often children do not use their illustrations to look at comprehension, and this is especially true in nonfiction. And I used to find that when I taught science, upper grades, they would never look at the graphs, they would never look at the illustrations, and the majority of your nonfiction comprehension comes from the illustrations. So one of the things you will see teachers do with RTI for the lower grades in terms of English language arts is having them look back at the illustrations. How do you know that? What do you think might happen next? And these are conversations. It's a very different ELA classroom than even 10 years ago because there are more conversations going back and forth between students, between teachers coming in, scaffolding, leading the way. So it's not a scripted format with RTI. It looks very different for the younger students. And math, whole another ball game. We are moving away from memorize it and spit it out. So there are now discussions of math, and the whole Envisions program, that the big emphasis there is creating a math focus wall, which, should I just dive into that?
I was going to say.
Oh, okay, I'll go up here. So when we looked at our analysis for math MCAS, and then I'll go back to the focus wall, I guess, since we did move to the slide. The lower grades across the boards in all the schools, measurement and data, number, and operations in base 10 was a relative area of weakness that was identified by the teachers, actually. And you could see that as you move up, measurement came across if you don't have a strong understanding of how to measure, how to interpret the information. And up in grades 3 and 5, a bigger emphasis on fractions and decimals. Well, if you don't have the numbers and operational sense in base 10, you will never understand fractions and decimals. And operations and algebraic thinking, again, you need that strong number sense, so it kind of folds into it. And part of the Envisions training is very visual oriented, supported by technology as well. So a big portion of it that our teachers are just learning, again, this is a steep learning curve. Keep in mind, you've got the literacy, now we're adding a whole new math program, is one of the things they're focusing on developing is the math focus wall. And there's no script, no piece that the teacher has to do it a certain way. The math focus wall, they have guidelines in their lesson plans with the essential questions. The teacher, once they get to know the students and where the areas are that need a little more reinforcement, develop a visual focus wall with examples and samples and different ways of coming to an answer. There's just not one simple way. So we're moving away from 2 + 2 is 4. Well, how do you know 2 + 2 is 4? And you put the pictorials and so on. They're also using problem-solving strategies, and we're going to give a handout for staff that has laid out different kinds of things and using that terminology. How did you get to that answer? Oh, I counted up. No, I came to a number that I know that's a base 10 number and counted down. I drew a picture. I estimated and then figured it out using my math skills. So there are a variety of different problem-solving strategies. And a big piece that takes so much time is everyone collects data. I even saw it in kindergarten. It was great. They were different colors of apples. The students decided, what color do I like? They graphed it. You need to learn how to do that. And then the older you get, you need to analyze the data. Which one seemed to be the most favorite apple for the class, looking at the table? Which one seemed to be the least favorite? And knowing how to look at what you have graphed and how to interpret it. And then when you get up to grades 3, 4, and 5, trying to move away a little bit from everybody does bar graphs. What type of graph is going to show your data the best? Because that's key. One of the things everybody's very, very comfortable with are bar graphs, but sometimes a pie chart might be a better demonstration of the concept you're trying to get through. And then again, with older students, we're going to continue with the visual walls, focusing also a big piece of Envision's math is the math vocabulary and understanding it starting in the lower grades. So we don't say the plus sign, the addition sign, those kind of, they're very, very subtle key pieces of the vocabulary, but students have to understand it because when you come to an MCAS problem that's using the proper math terminology and they haven't had that foundation, even though they might know the answer, they're not going to be able to solve the problem. Any questions on the math piece? Again, steep learning curve. Let me tell you, it's a lot of work. And hats off to the teachers. They're really, really putting forth a lot of energy and learning the new program, getting used to it. Questions? Do you guys have anything else to add? Thank you very much.
Good evening. So this is the middle school MCAS improvement plan. The first item or the first focus area, I think it's as much of a building-wide initiative, regular education RTI initiative, than it is per se an MCAS initiative. It does allow us to address those students who scored warning or needs improvement. And we did use that data to start our year. Thanks to the commitment of the superintendent and assistant superintendent, we have a new assessment tool available to all the teachers at the middle school. It's called the STARS assessment, which is similar to an SRI, a scholastic inventory, or a assessment in reading or math at the elementary level. Last year we had a master schedule committee that went out on site visits to surrounding middle schools, and we really fell in love with a model that had an intervention period or an intervention block that was embedded into a master schedule. The middle school has some recent history of targeting those students either under RTI or from MCAS data in after-school programs, but we have purposely deviated from that model, and we feel, based upon the current research, that in the site visits of other schools, that when your intervention period or your interventions are built into the school day, students really see that growth. I think it's a combination of many factors. First, if you have an intervention after school, I think students are really at a point where, you know, some of them might just be done. It's also very difficult to get students sometimes to stay after school, especially if it's an academically focused area. We did, you know, we had different models of looking at late buses, but even with the late bus model, we did find that it was still difficult to have some students stay after school. So again, a building-wide model. Actually, it's more of a pilot in 7th and 8th grade, but something that we're looking to bring 6th, 7th, and 8th grade is a master schedule that all 7th and 8th grade students now know their H period as a intervention period, where they either are taking a intervention class, which focuses on those skills that through the data the teachers need to focus on, or what I absolutely love about this model is it aligns so perfectly to our school improvement plan of last year and the focus on school council. It has opened up, this new master schedule has opened up 6 new enrichment courses for those students who, through the data and through the assessments that were given quarterly, if we find that we don't have to target them for intervention or remedial reasons, then they are brought in their H period class to an enrichment class, which our teachers absolutely love. Even though the ELA teachers and math teachers particularly like to have in front of them the students who they know, based upon the STAR assessment, are struggling. So they can target a whole group that might be struggling in a couple key areas at the same time. They also love an opportunity to gather in front of them those students who might need more of a challenge or something different than their traditional core classes. We have an Italian class, for example. We have a social studies world history enrichment class. We have a math enrichment class. So what we have found as a school and the school council of last year, with the focus on offering more opportunities for those high achieving students, that this intervention block has done both. It targets those students who might need that remediation and that intervention, and it targets those students who might need more of a challenge in something different. And we're very proud to have that offered to all 7th and 8th graders. The STAR assessment is done quarterly. Before the STAR assessment, it was the teachers' quarterlies that really gave us that data. Whenever you invest in an outside assessment, you know, void is the teacher bias in that assessment. And when I say bias, I don't mean a bias in, say, correcting that assessment, but even as a test designer myself, I taught 7th grade English for almost 10 years. I would put together an assessment and maybe I would leave out a certain standard because even in my subconscious, you know, mind, I was thinking I really didn't do a very good job teaching that standard. So if all my students would do well on my quarterly and I would share that out to my principal, well, I don't know if that's really an accurate reflection and if that really captures where the students should be at. So along with some professional development and some consult with teachers who are part of this decision at the middle school, you know, I think they're in a place where they understand the investment of this outside assessment done quarterly is a good thing. We think it's going to capture students better than MCAS because students who just took the STAR assessment in math today and yesterday know that their potential placement in their second quarter class is dependent on how well they did. And their teachers are going to get how well they did within just a couple days because it's a computer-based assessment. This is also a curriculum tool for the teachers. Not only do the teachers receive the data from the STARS assessment, the teachers who are leading that intervention period, but all the core teachers receive this data as well. And it really helps to fine-tune the curriculum in going into the next quarter. And again, it gives me, as the instructional leader in the building, an accurate snapshot of where students are. place that against MCAS at the middle school level, you know, there's a lot of middle schoolers who still walk around 15 years into MCAS thinking that it really doesn't count for much of anything at all at the middle school level. And we're not able to discuss with them or talk with them about how well they did until 4 months later when they're in a completely different grade and we lost a third of those students. So the investment in STARS is just something that I want to publicly thank the superintendent's office and the committee. This is a pilot for the 7th and 8th grade, but if it goes very well, and so far Q1 is actually coming to a close, it has gone pretty well. We're going to look to bring this 6 to 8, and I think this might be a tool where I want to invite the other principals in the district, and we might look at it as a tool in other grades as well. The open response question is, we're in our year 2. We adopted a building-wide open response kind of method or methodology building-wide. In every subject, if it's PE, if it's art, if it's health and wellness, if it's Spanish, if it's a science class, all the teachers work on a skill set of writing, which all the ELA teachers and all the teachers across the building are excited at the fact that all students are working on writing across the discipline monthly and working on those skills that really build a good foundation for open response. I did want to just slip into, the 6th grade teachers wanted me to just share that we are starting to see some of the benefits of the literacy program and the literacy commitment that the committee really made and the elementary school teachers have really made. It's wonderful to walk into a class, a 6th grade class, and have a student talk about himself or herself as a reader, and talk about the author as a writer, and to talk about the author's purpose. So even though that curriculum isn't at the middle school, we are seeing it trickle up. And I have to give a lot of credit to my 6th and 7th grade teachers who are banging down the doors of the elementary schools to try to get down here to make sure that that transition is seamless and that they promote the skills and the foundation that is built at the elementary level. So I wanted to share that as well. Because I remember 3 or 4 years ago, a couple school committee members who are still on the committee, really felt it very important to have a literacy program, that was at the elementary school. At the time, and this was 3 superintendents ago, I really pounded my fist saying, also in the middle school, also in the middle school. And even though that commitment then wasn't made, we're starting to see that commitment come up to the middle school through the students, which is a pretty magical thing. Any questions?
I, of course, based on my previous question, you would get that I love the enrichment piece. So I'm really glad that that's an option for students. If you have H period, does that mean that the students have 8 different sessions?
8 classes? Yep.
And so how long is each period?
About 40, I think we're like 46 minutes or so. Yep. You're welcome. We did not add a period. We always had an H period, and it was just it was a different period for all students. Again, this is a completely different master schedule where now right now, just because we're in the pilot, all 7th and 8th graders, H period, we know they're going to what we call the intervention block. And the teams have the autonomy also to pull back a little. And instead of, let's say all the students go to their intervention class, let's say once a quarter, the students who owe work before a quarter close go, in a science lab, and all the students who don't owe work, do something a little bit more fun. So there's so many other things you can do with the intervention block. I know schools who have an intervention block that uses that for, let's say, once a quarter, there's an all-school assembly. Because you're not giving a disruption in the core classes, and you're not always using that independent art class as well. So there's a lot of other benefits, especially when you go whole building intervention block to that master schedule.
Will the STAR results being shared with the students?
Yes, absolutely. Because one of the things is if we're using it for placement, then we find it important that not only do they understand where they're going in terms of either an intervention block or an enrichment block, they understand their score and the areas in which that they need to focus on as well. You know, one of the things that I find important, and if you are a parent of the middle school, you receive a lot of emails from me. You know, I do embed this information in emails. I just sent out, I believe, a third email about this, just because I found it important that if parents didn't really fully understand it, that, you know, if their student, when brushing their teeth 2 mornings ago, said, I'm taking this new test on a computer, and it kind of feels like MCAS, Mom, you know, I want parents to understand what it is. And, you know, I have to give a lot of credit to our students. You know, again, all of them went through the STAR assessment. The 7th graders, I believe, went through it yesterday, and the 8th graders went through it today. And a lot of them came to me and said that was nothing like MCAS. You know, it's a diagnostic test. It's supposed to be done kind of quickly. It's supposed to be embedded in there, and it's supposed to be a snapshot. So, you know, we're also looking at the pathway to share those results with the parents as well. Because what was tremendously awkward to start our year to build that intervention class roster or that enrichment class roster is we used the spring 2015 MCAS scores. And what was tremendously awkward for me, a person who prides himself on communication, is we used it for placement, but I was not allowed to share scores with parents at that time. So I did have a couple parents who shared with me, I understand what data you're using, but I'm curious, if my student is in enrichment class, I'm guessing he did well, can you share with me his score? And I couldn't. But with the STAR assessment, I can. And I have to tell you, I wasn't at all too keen on the idea of using MCAS for placement either, because the students 4 months ago when they took the test, you know, they weren't told that. Now, this year they may, I don't know, but we also, again, have the STARS. Since the STARS just came online, I don't know if we'll use MCAS for placement in the beginning of next year or we'll use STARS. It's a work in progress. Okay, thank you.
Good evening, everybody. Does anybody want to get up, stand up for a minute? We've been sitting for like 2 hours, right? So, you want to stand up?
No, I was waiting for your guitar.
Guitar? Oh, I could do jumping jacks right now. So, good evening, everybody. I wanted to thank those school committee members that came out for our NEAS visit. As you know, we had our NEAS visit a couple weeks ago. Very intense, anxiety-filled time for us here at the high school and in the district, but I think it went very well, and looking forward to seeing how we did in the next 60 to 90 days. Pardon my paper, I just write a lot of notes for myself. I generally go on random tangents, so I need to kind of control what I say and how I say it. It is past 4:32, so you see a different side of me as well. Just some key terms that I'm hearing today that I think is great to hear. Pre and post assessments, collecting data, common assessments, being coached, inferences, modeling, exemplars, formative assessments, summative assessments, analysis, problem-solving strategies, scaffolding, identifying strengths and weaknesses. This is everything that our colleagues, or my colleagues, were saying just today, and I think it's phenomenal that we're all saying the same thing. You know, we are pre-K through 12. The successes and the hard work that we all put in reaches our kids, and I think it's great to hear that. I do want to publicly acknowledge my colleagues, our staff, the students, as well as our parents for all the hard work and effort that we all put in to really get our students to achieve academic progress. I think that's our key goal. That's one of our main assessments as principals, is how much academic progress is made. And I think what you see coming down at the elementary school and the middle school only brings success to the high school. So I really appreciate all the programs, all the initiatives, all the wonderful ideas that my colleagues have, because we see that clearly at the high school. What else? Okay, so in terms of academic progress, I have my improvement plan on there, ELA, science, and math. You'll see that they're specific in terms of content. I will reference them, but I really want to just talk about the general perspective of what MCAS is and looking at academic progress. Just a few highlights from this year in terms of what we're doing. All of our sophomores took PSATs. It's the first time that we've had all of our sophomores take PSATs. And what I can tell you is that the students that came back from the PSATs and what they were asking teachers and talking about was really phenomenal. And using that as a learning piece and a learning curve with what they're doing in class and how they're teaching and why they're looking at certain things. Varsha mentioned something about, I think in kindergarten through second grade, they're talking about fractions and decimals. Well, PSATs was full of fractions and decimals and probability. And our kids were talking about, you know what, maybe I should have paid a little more attention on that, because that was a lot of what the PSATs are all about. Our sophomores never talked about PSATs for the select few that took them. Generally, our juniors were the ones that take that, but having our PSATs with our sophomores is going to help us with placement and getting an understanding of where our kids are from a college career readiness standpoint, but also how many of them are ready for AP level classes. We had 104 students, or we do have 104 students right now enrolled in AP level classes, which is pretty good. We're looking to increase that. I would love to have half of our student body take at least one AP level class. Again, I think the goal is for students to take a class that is a reach class, something that's a little higher level. So if they're taking a CP level class, I would love for them to take at least one honors level course before they leave in 4 years' time. The end goal is for students to be able to take an AP level class, because again, I think the analogy with AP is that AP is a college class. So if we're looking at our students that are going to college, which we have about 75% of our kids that go to college, they're going to experience a, quote, AP class when they go and sit in that freshman year seminar at UMass or Framingham State, or Cameron going to University of Minnesota, which you just got into, and being able to experience that. So we want students to be able to know what that is, know what the rigor is like in high school with the supports prior to getting into college. We just had 4 students go to a math meet at WPI. First time that we've had kids go to a math competition. They did really well. We actually have one of our students that received a $1,000 scholarship to go to WPI if he chooses to go to. So I think that's a phenomenal thing. We had our second perfect 800 score. So we just got that in math, second person in the class of 2016. So I thought that was phenomenal. Saturday AP workshops, we just mentioned. Griffin, Cam's his brother. Griffin mentioned the Saturday AP workshop. So we have a bunch of students that are going and attending Saturday workshops. This weekend, they're going to Auburn, and it's on AP English. And that's it on that side. So let me just talk about the MCAS improvement plan. ELA observations, what did we see in English? In all question types, we did better per average than the state. So every single question that we had on ELA at the high school, we did better. 57% were advanced, 40% were proficient. We had no failures. So we had 97% of our high school kids be proficient to advanced, which is a phenomenal thing for us. So again, I put that all on our students, our teachers, as well as our parents. Last year's weakness, when some of you heard our MCAS improvement plan, last year's weakness was the nonfiction writing. That was actually an improvement. That was one of our strengths this year. So using the MCAS improvement plan, actually implementing that, doing pre and post assessments, doing the interventions, putting in the strategies, definitely helps. Areas of strength this year. So a lot of our students really did well with straightforward open response writing. So when we're talking about that literacy initiative, the literacy initiative has helped with straightforward open responses. Vocabulary acquisition and use was really one of our strengths. This year, in terms of areas of weakness, we're looking at differentiating between figurative and literal language, but we're also looking at the close reading. Another piece that's pretty interesting right now is the text-to-text connections. So utilizing two passages and comparing and making connections. So essentially, students are reading two passages, and then they have to make inferences and comparisons to that. What we found out was that was something that was brand new to MCAS. We didn't have that type of question on the MCAS prior to last year, and we're assuming that that's coming from sort of Park and where that's going with a Common Core. So that's something that's going to be a focus for us. Again, in terms of action steps for us, we're looking at the big picture. I could show you specifics. This is what we're weak in. This is how we can improve. This is what we're going to do. But again, I think we need to look at action steps from a general standpoint and how do we raise academic achievement. So looking at our 8th grade MCAS scores, we saw that there were some proficiencies there, so we decided to go and create a communication and literacy course. So we have some select freshmen based off of their MCAS deficiencies that are taking a semester-long communication and literacy class. So that's in place of an elective. Actually, it's not in place of elective. It's those students that have a study hall and now are placed in a communication and lit class with our department head for English. We're continuing to do our literacy initiative. So we talked about that last year. We're going to talk about that this year. Elementary and middle school is doing the same thing. So we're looking at the open responses. So similar to what middle school is doing, we're looking at explanation, development of claims, supporting those claims and making connections. So it's not just about reading and then be able to recite or repeat or recall. We're looking to really build connections. Again, open response to us was an area of weakness. We are lucky to say that that's an area of strength for us. Another common theme, we've heard it here, data is going to drive instruction. So we need to go and use the data that we have, whether it's MCAS, whether it's PSATs, whether it's STARS, whether it's the programs that are at the elementary school. That's what's going to really drive our focus. So if you look at the assessments and the next steps, we're looking at PLC time. So PLC time is professional learning community time that all of our teachers have. It's a 45-minute period where teachers get together and they talk about the data, they talk about common assessments, they talk about developing common assessments so that if you have a son or a daughter that's in Algebra 1 with Mr. Smith and another son or daughter that's with Mrs. Smith taking Algebra 1, they're being assessed on the same thing. Because that is something that we need to go and make sure that they're getting the same experience and the same content. And then, again, just development of common assessments. We need to make sure that we have common assessments that are looking at high-level thinking and high-level thought. You know, I remember taking an assessment, an exam, that was all just multiple choice or matching, or it was all recall. It was, can I regurgitate what I just crammed in for 45 minutes so I could take the exam and get the A? It's not like that anymore. We're looking at, can students analyze, compare and contrast, synthesize, look at those charts, look at the pictures. I'm glad to hear that that's what's happening at the elementary level. It's just phenomenal to see that. So that is something from an ELA standpoint that we need to go and do and continue to improve on. Do I have everybody with me still? Okay, no random tangents. Okay, next. Again, if you want this information, I'm more than happy to share any of the improvement plan, but there's a lot in there, and it's straight fact. So when we're looking at, I believe this was math. Oh no, bio. Okay, so let me flip over to my biology. Okay, so biology, in terms of what we saw, where our strengths was on topics of genetics and chemistry. So our weaknesses are looking at evolution, anatomy, and cell biology. But again, the majority of our students, 88%, were advanced or proficient. We had 2 students, or 2%, that failed, which I think is a pretty good number. Our correlation, or our direct correlation between students that had needs improvement to getting to proficient was how they were doing, or their determining factor was on how they were doing on the open response. What our teachers found out was that some of our students chose not to take the open response question or do it whatsoever. Or the open response required 8 answers and they chose to do 2 of 8. So again, we need to go and look at specifically, why are kids not taking the open response question seriously, and having them realize that that one question could change from a needs improvement to a proficient, or a proficient to an advanced. Because what we were looking at is all the multiple choice questions that they were taking, they were doing really well. They were scoring at a proficiency level, but as soon as they got to that open response question, our select few, and again, 2% could be two or three students in the district of 120 with our sophomores, that just chose not to do it. So was it just test fatigue? Was it something that they just didn't understand? Was it the multiple part question that was in there that it was too much for them? But that is something that we definitely needed to look at. Now, in terms of, so again, I think in biology, we need to really focus in on the open response and using the literacy format that our English or our ELA teachers are doing, to be able to explain, develop claims, and to really support and make connections. Again, I think our weakness isn't the content that's being covered. I think it's really just the techniques and the practices that we're using. Because MCAS is different than what we're experiencing in the classroom. It's the type of questions, it's the wording, it's the phrases, it's the little things that really get our students confused. So in terms of strategies, that's what we're really focused in on, rather than the content. They know this, they have the content knowledge, it's developing those skills to truly be able to synthesize what it is that that test is asking for. I will say that we are doing something a little different with biology. Last year we had roughly, I would say about 85% of our freshmen take a Biology 1 course. And the sophomores would take Bio 2. So essentially we would have 85% of our students take 2 years of biology. Then they get into possibly chem or physics in their junior and senior year, but most of our students were taking electives like environmental science, forensics, so the chemistry piece, which I feel really important about and passionate about as a former science teacher, needed to be in there. So we had 24 of our freshmen take a biology course, which was an honors level course, it was a full year course, and then they took the MCAS at the end of their freshman year. This year we have about 55 freshmen who are being pushed to take 1 year of biology, and then they will go into an AP Bio or a chemistry class in their sophomore year, so that they're getting that content knowledge and the specific skills. So I'm curious to see how our students do with biology this year, based off of just that track that we have. So I just wanted to throw that out there to you. Finally, math. Just go back. Okay, so in terms of observations, we had 2 students that failed math. We had 60% advanced, 29 proficient. So again, we have a high number of students that passed the MCAS, so we had 89% proficiency with math. Looking at areas of strength, it's really about reasoning with equations and inequalities, interpreting categorical and quantitative data, so essentially statistics, and then looking at seeing structures in expressions. Those are our strengths that our math department came up with. In terms of areas of weakness, we're looking at geometric properties with equations, creating equations, functions, and solving literal equations, so manipulating variables. Somebody out there said, we don't just teach math anymore, right? We don't just do math. We don't just do 2 + 2 is 4. We need to go and figure out what that is. So my wonderful department head in math, who just went to a professional development, heard this phrase and thought it was great. I thought it was awesome too, because I think this is the emphasis of where math needs to go. So the emphasis is not on just answer making, getting the answer, but really thinking about sense making. We need to make sense of math. We need to make math sensible, rather than just doing math. Because at some point, when you get to high level math, you're not gonna understand what's going on. I never got calculus because I crammed for every little thing, and it was all memory and recall, and my brain just was an overload when I got to calculus. So I had to relearn math concepts. So those are action steps that we're looking to do. How do we make sense of math rather than just do math? A lot of our kids are just looking for the answer. What's the right answer? What's the right answer? What's the right answer so I can get the A? We don't care about the right answer. We're really thinking about what's the thought process for you to make sense of. I think that's really going to be key. Again, the common theme of having common assessments that are truly high level. When you're looking at this chart, we're looking at emphasis on rewording questions in a variety of ways to get students to be more flexible in their thinking. Having students write about the process of solving literal equations. So rather than not just solving, but really thinking about it and describing that. Our math department head mentioned something about 4 views of a problem. So when you're looking at a problem, how do you build a connection between a graph, an equation, tables of values, and words to describe a problem? So when they're looking at problems, again, it's not just the answer, but looking at multiple views on what that problem truly means. Another cool thing that I think is really happening is having students find the error in the problems. So they may have an answer to a problem, or a possible answer to a problem, and they need to think about whether that is the true answer. And if it's not, why? What's the reason behind that? So again, I think that is what's going to be key in terms of improving our MCAS, but at the same time, really improving the academic rigor and the challenges that face that. That's it. Sorry. Woo! Sorry. Anybody have any questions? I need one, please.
All right, I'll give you one. How do you teach the students the disconnect between math as a problem solving, lots of ways to solve the problem, look at all the graph pictures, whatever, and I'm not concerned with the right answer, but I take the SAT and I've got to have an answer.
Mm-hmm.
So where do you make that connection?
Maybe I shouldn't have asked for somebody to give me. No, I think it's a great question. I think there's a balance. I think there is a balance to understanding problems. Obviously, there are right answers to certain problems. That's what math is, right? Again, in MCAS and PSATs, SATs, there is a right answer to something specific. I think just trying to create a balance of what that is. So being able to come up with the appropriate answer, but having multiple ways of getting there, I think is what's going to be key. You know, I mean, you can get the right answer, but you may not know why or how. And that's ultimately, I think, true knowledge is to understand that, and that's something that'll be with you for life, rather than thinking about, 8th grade geometry and thinking about, what it was that you learned. I think that's what's key.
Mike, do you want me to try and answer any questions? Go for it.
Sure, we'll get the guru here.
I don't know about guru, maybe charlatan. Basically, you start off at the early level building conceptual understanding. If you build conceptual understanding, that follows through. So when they get to higher math, they have the basis to answer the question and know what the answer means and be able to explain what the answer is. If you don't have the conceptual understanding, if you don't build that at a young age, they're very difficult for them to do higher math. So getting the answer is not the goal in the early years. Understanding the math and the mathematical process is the goal. Answer is second. Okay?
I'm not disagreeing with you. Trust
Right,
me,
right.
I teach math, so I'm not
Right.
disagreeing with you.
Right.
But even at the younger grades,
Mhm.
when they take the MCAS test, there's a right answer.
Right, there is, right.
A little bit for the process, and you have to show your
Right.
work and yada, yada, yada.
Right, but if they have the,
Two has to be 4 on this score sheet.
yes, but the problem is if you only teach that, they won't be able to do the high end.
I agree.
Okay? So if they understand the conceptual piece, they will also get the answer.
But what
Okay?
I'm asking you, do you find that there's a disconnect between learning the concept and getting the right answer?
Well, there can always be, there can always be disconnects, but you find less of the kid looking at a problem, not being able to see the math behind it, and skipping to the next one. Okay, and that's what the difference is. And the new tests that are coming up, and you'll see people grab snippets and throw it up on Facebook, is it's not about you not only have to have the answer, you have to explain how you got the answer. Going back to the open response, and the ones they're skipping, those are the ones they're skipping, because they were not, that was not built early on. Okay? So that's what needs to happen, and that's difficult. It's a process. It's brand new here. You know, we need to be very proud of our elementary teachers and the effort they're putting into this, but it is a major change from what's been done in the past. And it is difficult. It's going to be difficult, but it's going to benefit our kids going forward, because if they can see math, see patterns, understand the math, because there's multiple ways to find that answer. But if they're only taught one way to find the answer, and they can't apply different ways to get an answer, they're not going to be able to think in that, you know, and, you know, I can speak to my 19-year-old who's, you know, has done AP Calc and all the other sort of stuff. She was taught a developmentally based, conceptually based math. She sees math, okay? And she can explain it to her sister who has learning disabilities, because she can see math. It's totally, and it's just amazing. She'll look at things and she'll see patterns, and she'll come up with a way of solving it that is not your traditional way of solving it, because she can see math, and that's what we need to build. We need to build mathematical thinking, not arithmetic, okay? Because you can get a calculator to answer a question, to do arithmetic, okay? You're not going to get it to solve mathematical problems and engineer the future.
I'd like to jump in that. At the elementary level, my level, we're doing number talks, which is building that exactly. And I was down in this room, and they were doing their tasks with longhand. I mean, you do multiply out. Okay, pretty good. Congratulations. But on the other hand, you know, say you're making $50,000 a year, and you make that longhand and you tax it at $70,000 a year. If you had no numbers in it, you would just pay that amount. So if you have enough number time to say, well, wait a minute, that is wrong. And similar to what Justin was saying is, we don't memorize facts anymore. I mean, if you're looking for facts, you're looking for what time is this movie playing, you Google everything. So you don't memorize facts anymore. You can Google facts. You have to make connections between facts, whether it's text to text or person to person or a different period of history or something. But that's where education is going anymore. It's not memorizing the capital of Massachusetts anymore. You can Google that. Well, you need to calculate it next. So it's changed.
I'll piggyback on yours. I would say that we're doing that in my district, and constructing viable arguments on why somebody's right, why somebody's wrong, is also building confidence. So in those right and wrong answers, when they get to those SATs and they're taking those tests, they are going to be able to talk about those viable arguments and why this answer is right and this answer is wrong. So we're just diving into that right now and explaining that. So using, you know, all the different ways to get to this answer, but also looking at different answers and creating that viable argument on why it's right or why it's wrong, so that they're confident enough to make that choice in the end. So that you have under, well, you have on your slide. Yeah. Working from there. Yeah. Where it makes sense.
I wanted to say thank you very much to our leadership team and our building principals and our special ed director. It's a lengthy process to cover all of this. For folks at home, spread the word. Teaching and learning is alive and well. I hear a lot of good things tonight. Engagement of students, rigor of curriculum, data-driven decision-making and assessments. I told everybody on our first day back, September 1st this year, I said, you know, we have a lot of competition out there for our students. And students and parents have a lot of choices today. And if we stop worrying about what everyone else does and focus on what we can do better and execute well, then we'll be fine. You know, you heard about the math students our students going to WPI. Our tech director has a connection at Brown University. And the grad program there around STEM and robotics wants to invite our middle school and high school students to come to Brown University to look at 3D and 4D labs and what they're doing in robotics at Brown University. That's phenomenal. And that is the type of leadership we have not only in the building but in the classrooms. And I think that we know where we have to improve, and we can execute, as we have seen here on some of the longitudinal data that Dr. Thompson showed us. You look at where students were a couple years ago, and you see the progress. That's fantastic. So I want to thank, again, everyone for your attention, and say goodnight to the leadership team, and we'll continue with the meeting. Thank you. To the report of the superintendent, hopefully the next 3 items will not be quite as long as the first 2. So moving along, the FY17 budget percentages and enrollments, we have that in the packet every year. We are required to report October 1st enrollment data to the state, and we have in front of us the enrollment, including percentages, which is important for FY17, as that is how it is split. The percentages have been running remarkably consistent. Blackstone for the upcoming year will be 71.86%, Millville 28.14%, and that's based upon the number of students, 488 from Millville, 1,246 from Blackstone. So we did see a slight decline in our population this year compared to a year ago. So that is simply for information for all. The next item is the proposed fence for the JFK playground, and I wanted to just highlight that. I did include, and I apologize for the couple of pieces that went into that, but I wanted to include some bullets around that so that everyone had the information that was requested. The only reason that I brought this forward is my job as superintendent is to make sure our students and staff are safe, and given the current student population at JFK, it was recommended by both building administration and our special ed director to ask for a fence to go from one end of the driveway at JFK on Lincoln Street around the corner and up to the parent drive-in off of Mendon Street. Again, there's a lot of concern about the change, and I certainly understand that. I appreciate the fact that that's a very park-like area, and has been for many, many years. But certainly, you know, students have changed dramatically over the last generation, and given the current students there, it was recommended, and I bring to the committee for their discussion and vote on as to whether or not we can put a fence in there. Be happy to answer any questions if I can.
Do you want to bring a motion forward first procedurally so that we can open it up to the questions?
I don't think we need a motion. It's on here, just, it says discussion.
It
On
should-
the agenda, it says discussion.
So I don't
Okay. I
think we need
have
a
a couple
motion
of
to talk
questions.
about
You have the BOS would support it. I've never seen this on the Board of Selectmen's agenda. How do you know they're going to support it?
That was relayed to me by the town administrator, Mr. Keys.
I mean, with the open
I have
meeting
not had-
laws, I think that would be an incredibly difficult thing for Mr. Keys to assess based upon the fact it's never been on an agenda, the town of Blackstone. A couple of things. You have the district would be responsible for $25,000, the first $25,000. Anything below $25,000 that would occur to this fence would be their responsibility.
Yes, that's both lease agreements, I believe, had that similar wording.
And you got most chain link fence or maintenance fee for the first 25 years. Where'd you get that?
I got that from the fence company.
Yeah, no doubt. I've had chain link fence around my pool. It's only 5 years old and it's already got issues that require maintenance, so. Can I give you my general assessment of this? And you're concerned about safety, and I do understand and appreciate that. I wouldn't make any vote on this unless it was contingent, consistent with prior discussions we've had concerning irrigation of soccer fields at the complex, where we required the Parks and Recs to go back to the Board of Selectmen. The woman who came here looking for our support with respect to putting a playground at Millville, here, we required the same thing. I think we need to be consistent. And I think we need to make the same requirements for the same projects that we're going to have here. In terms of safety, we're focusing on this fence. I had a disturbing experience yesterday where 5 schools came and run a cross-country meet at Hartnett. Okay? No fewer than 15 kids came out of the woods after being stung repeatedly by bees. I'm told that your administrators were well aware of this problem. Nothing was done. Parental supervision wasn't provided, and I'm also told that they can't deal with the bee problem with insecticides because then they'll have to give notice of the problem. Instead, we had over 10 kids coming out of the woods, some were multiply stung by bees, because apparently the older kids ran first.
I'm sorry, I don't want to stop you mid-sentence, but we're talking about a fence, and.
No,
I
we're
think
talking
if
about a
the-
safety issue,
Well-
and thank you for not interrupting, but you just did. We're talking about safety. We're talking about how our administrator looks at safety, and I'm bringing up another issue that occurred, which I think impacted significant number of children. And I want to know how, when we're looking at safety, how we look at it in the general scope of the student population. Because we had a number of kids injured. So no, I don't think it's not to be discussed. I think we need to discuss how we're looking at safety and how we're carving out those issues that we want to talk about.
Well, I think it relates back to what we said 2 meetings ago when this was first brought to us, was is the things that have been brought to us we are able to address and deal with. And then the fence was just kind of submitted as though we're going to put it up, and there was no information around it. Same thing with what you're bringing up about the bees at the middle school. I've definitely heard, I did not know what happened yesterday, but it's what's brought to us and what we can actually make good decisions on, because we have the information at hand.
And
I completely agree with you.
And Erin, I understand and I appreciate that, but what is our source of things being brought to us? I mean, we get a project that has a particular interest. If the administrators don't perceive it to be a safety issue that's worthy of being brought before us, it's not brought before us. They were referring to it, the Blackstone kids were joking, referring to it as Bee Woods. Now, you have to understand, the way the thing ran was, the older kids went first, then the younger kids went. It's like a horror show. So I'm just curious as to what standard you're utilizing to bring safety issues to this committee. I just happened to be there. And the fence issue I knew was coming up. Quite frankly, now we're hearing for the first time that it's going to be donated as opposed to that it's going to come out of some funding from the school.
Well, I think the fence?
The fund is going to be donated through a contribution. That's what the bulletin said.
Can you
Clarify that.
That was said to us 2 weeks ago.
Let me respond a couple of ways here, please.
Okay, but this is a public hearing, okay? So, you know what? I have a right to say whatever I'm going to say. Okay, thank you.
Let me first respond to Mr. Wozniak's comparison of bees to the fence. I apologize, but that's the first I heard of a bee issue at the middle school yesterday. So I will respond to tomorrow morning. In regards to the fence, 2 meetings ago I said that we were asking for donations. It's getting close to a reality that we will have a vendor who will be able to donate the cost of the fence so it wouldn't have any impact. That has been consistent.
Could you just answer John's question, though, which was, how are these safety issues being brought to us? So it's consistent.
So it's consistent.
That's
So
your
we have-
question.
Right, that was my point, Aaron.
Most safety issues we can deal with within the conscriptions of school and staff and student safety. The fence, because it was going to involve construction on the property, and I was a bit unclear as to ownership, went to the town manager, town administrator, and he said that simply the school committee would then have to approve it, and then it would go to the board. The Board of Selectmen, through the town administrator, didn't want to step on the school committee's toes, and so the fence, it has been told to me that I should have just put it in and then worried about it later, but that doesn't seem right either. Most safety we take care of within the building or the district, whether it's asbestos, whether it's strange smells that are outside, whether it's MRSA virus, whether it's flu. We take care of the safety, and we take it very seriously. And most of that doesn't go outside of the response to those particular instances. And to be fair, if it's a health issue, then yes, that's communicated home to parents. If it's a building maintenance issue, then that is taken care of immediately. Obviously, if there was something at this level, then yes, the school committee should be notified. But, you know, I'm not quite sure about the bees being, what's the standard of safety. We take care of safety each and every day in each and every one of our schools, Mr. Wozniak. And a lot of times the safety and security is not a well-known fact for obvious reasons in this day and age. And in today's environment, that is taken care of in charge to the superintendent with building administration. That's what the Mass General Laws gives to me via the school committee appointing me.
I guess my question is more geared to this. You give me deep concern by telling me you don't even know about a bee problem. It seemed to be a pretty well-known fact by all faculty members from Blackstone at that cross-country regional meet. We weren't just one town. It was 5 different schools were there. We had small children coming stumbling out of the woods with bees stuck to their faces. The kids prior to the meet were referring to it as bee woods, so the students were well aware of it. The Blackstone, my understanding was that at least the people from Blackstone were well aware of the problem. People were going to discussing EpiPens. So my concern is this fence, and it is a little bit beyond it, but I'm concerned from this perspective. First, we made a decision, just because the Board of Selectmen says, well, we want the school committee to deal with it first. That's nice for them to say that. But the fact is, they own the building. We don't. We lease the building. So I thought that based upon the discussions we had with the playground, from that perspective, that we were going to address it in a very standard and systematic way every time one of these requests were made, whether it's for this building or for one of the other buildings that is owned by Blackstone that we're leasing. I thought we were going to handle it procedurally in the same fashion. The second issue that gives me pause for concern is, because you made a point that this is a safety issue, and you're going to utilize your powers as a superintendent to deal with it because it's a safety issue. We're talking about a small segment of the we're talking about a school that's been here for how many decades? How many incidents, and my understanding is there hasn't been a single incident with a child hit by a car from that playground. Not a single one. That's fine, and I understand the safety concern. However, I have a concern when a particular issue such as this fence is brought before us, but yet these other issues, I'm just curious as to what we're doing in terms of overall safety for our entire student population to facilitate that. In other words, is there a process whereby, Alan, you're told by your principals, by your assistant administrators, by whoever makes the rounds, that this is a particular problem? This is what I was told. I was told that they would have had to use, because it's been a warmer fall, this problem has occurred and it's been in place not just for this particular day, but it's been in place sometime before. And that my understanding is they didn't want to use pesticides because they'd have to give notice. Now you're telling me you're not aware of that. And by the confused look of the man seated to your left, he doesn't seem to have so that's a concern. That it seemed to be, everybody knew that it would in fact occurred, but nobody had it. And it is separate and apart. Now, agree, Jane, for this particular, from this level, it seems like it's a foregone conclusion that you've already told us that you were told you should go ahead and put this fence up anyway. This is the second time it's come here. We have certain things, people are donating it. That's consistent, you're right, from your first meeting. The Board of Selectmen hasn't had a formal meeting under the open meeting laws. That bullet point can't possibly be the case. Vehicle damage wasn't my issue. My issue was vandalism, but I think that's answered by your issue here with the $25,000. So if there's less than $25,000 of damage to this fence, then we pay. And if there's more than $25,000 worth of damage, then the town pays. Considering that your cost of the fence is $14,000, thereabouts, let's call it 15, there will never be damage that won't exceed the replacement of the entire fence for at least a particular period of time based upon the inflation principles, right? So, I mean, that's the fence, but those are my other issues that spin off of that.
A couple of things. My son's been on the cross-country team for 7 years, and I've probably been at that cross-country course 80 to 100 times in that time. This past summer, I probably spent 10 hours on that course myself with, a weed whacker, etc. And there is a certain point where it literally runs on the property line. There's a farmer's field right next to that. I know we've made inquiries to try to buy that property in the past and it hasn't worked out. But again, maybe spraying, there is a farm right next door. He's growing corn. I would really wonder if we can put pesticides right on the property line. The final meet of the year was yesterday. So the students will not be, running, we will not have any more large meets on that. Again, moving other direction, I think if there is a consistency, I think consistency in terms of safety is when an issue is brought up, we deal with it. And superintendent was informed about the issue with the fence. I know, Alan, that was probably one of the things you noticed when you were in District 10 minutes. You probably noticed that right away. But it was brought to you, and you've dealt with it, and here's our solution. So I see them as two absolutely separate issues. I'd say if there's something consistent, if something's brought up, we deal with it. Something was brought up, we're dealing with it, here's our solution. I'd say let's move forward with this.
Agree. Jane?
No, I agree with Steve, and I was not trying to push another issue aside. I just felt like we've been talking about this issue. There are parents who are here, I assume, concerned about this issue, and I felt like we were ignoring fence to talk about bees. And I see that you were trying to talk safety in general, and I get that. Okay. But I just really wanted to focus on fence, but we didn't have a motion, so in essence, there was nothing off topic because we didn't have a motion on the floor.
Exactly, and I want to be clear that I wasn't trying to necessarily go off topic. I saw a genuinely concerning portion of the way we were dealing with it. And this may be the last meet, but do you know how many children you had out there yesterday? How much, in terms of safety? We're talking about building the fence so a child won't run out into the roadway. We're talking about children who had bees stuck to them and were writhing on the ground and had subsequent related injuries. So I hear that, I see the fence, we had a discussion, and I got to tell you the most frustrating part of this discussion on this fence, because our ability to discuss this in a public forum is limited. Because we use terms like the student population has changed over the years, giving us more safety concerns because we have privacy issues we need to protect and understand, and that's fine. So our discussion on this fence and this issue is somewhat limited. And in terms of the fence itself, I'm not necessarily opposed to the fence, although I have some issues with some of the peripheral things that I voiced at the last meeting. What I have an issue with, not a problem, but an issue and a genuine concern, is that I'm from Blackstone, take a lot of pride in this town, and when you have multiple towns there and a serious issue, a serious safety issue, because bee stings can be fatal and problematic, especially for young children, not being treated as seriously as this fence issue, then I wanted to bring it up because I wanted to bring it up, and this is the proper forum, because I want to understand how Alan's made aware. First thing he came up, I can't vault that guardrail at JFK, okay, without some effort, and I consider myself to be relatively physically fit. And I can't go through, because it's a double guardrail. We're not talking about a single rail. We're talking about a wide guardrail. And it doesn't immediately jump out to me that it poses a particular, I understand the issues, but it doesn't immediately jump out to me and say, oh, we've got to address this, okay? So I'm just curious as to what the process we're using, because this seems to be the main issue in this particular instance, safety. How Alan's made aware at the various facilities by his administrators, by his principals, by his vice principals, by his faculty, as to what safety issues are worthy of bringing to us or addressing by his office directly. Whether it be just put up the fence because you're not going to bring it to us anyway.
Go ahead.
Okay. Please don't think that I'm trying to minimize the bee stings or anybody who was stung by a bee. I'm not trying to do that. But I would like us to talk about the fence and the need for one. I think that there are probably lots of examples in the history of the district where we have made accommodations, where we have had to perhaps handicap restrooms or put special lighting or put ramps where ramps never existed before because there was a need, and that need may have been very slight. It may have been for one student for 1 year. And I understand the aesthetics of a chain link fence
in a community, in a park-like setting, that is really offsetting to people. I get that. But I believe with my whole heart, if we are talking about a safety issue and a student, and there's just one chance that the student will run, and I get we have a lot of paras, I get we have a lot of teachers, but as much as I can't jump that guardrail either, my daughter sure can. And I have seen a lot of kids who sure can. And I think that if a fence, donated fence that doesn't require town expense, that doesn't require school committee expense, that doesn't meet even this $25K. So yes, we are a leasee, but our lease says that we can make changes, we can make improvements, we can make whatever, as long as we don't hit that, I thought it was 20,000, but I'll say 25,000 threshold, that we can do that to the property. And this is an improvement, a safety issue, or whatever, to the property, not requiring budget of the school committee. So it's not a financial issue. It's not a policy issue per se, although I think John's concerns are policy issue for the future in terms of how we deal with safety across the board. I certainly do agree with that. But this particular fence, I don't know, I just think if you look at, safety standards for community playgrounds, if you look at national standards, Massachusetts does not have a law as it relates to schools. They do have a law for preschools, they do have a law for daycares and licensed facilities for young kids, but they don't have, so Massachusetts doesn't, but national safety standards do exist that say if a playground is near a road, there should be fencing. And I think we are negligent if we ignore this. I think we become negligent in serving the population.
Can I just remark on procedure, Jane, just to correct one point? That 25,000 is for maintenance, so there is a cost to the district. There will be a cost, but
Well, I
see,
would
that
like to
isn't whether we
clarify-
isn't whether we make modifications to the property. We have to get permission under the lease from the town of Blackstone to make or town of Millville, if we're going to do it this building, to make modifications to the building.
I was told we don't.
But I want to clarify one thing,
That's what
because
I
you've
was
said
told.
it now, and I feel that we've just gotten two separate sets of information. So, Mr. Himmelberger, if you could please clarify for us, when you brought it to us 2 meetings ago, you said 100% vendor donated. You just said you were seeking donations. So which of the two is it?
We do not have an official approval from the vendor yet, and I'm not, obviously, we wouldn't go forward if we didn't. So with that, hopefully is forthcoming.
So right now, the cost of the fence from North Smithfield Fence is $14,165. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay, so there's no funding as of yet for the
As of
fence.
right now, that is true.
So it is a financial responsibility we're looking at tonight, or
Well, I would say that we don't go forward unless we do have the donations, but I think that
I just want to clarify that I think we were all under the impression that when it was brought to us on September 24th, it was already donated.
No, we're waiting
So
for that.
are you looking for a motion then? So I would say
I don't-
like
I don't think
some
we
type
can
of a
make any
motion like
decisions.
pending donations, something like that.
School committee needs to
We
accept
need-
donations, so you can
we
accept the
need-
proposed donation.
Right, but on
if it
September
happens.
24th, I specifically asked for, I wanted to see the funding information. So,
Who's the, in procurements, what do you have to, what's the bottom line amount before you have to submit something like this out to bid?
35,000.
What is it?
35,000,
Is it 35? So anything under 35, you can just go do it?
correct.
Okay. I was just curious, I thought it was lower.
but there's a very big difference between saying that it's no cost to us and $14,165.
I would expect that in the next few days, several days to the week, we should have a funding agreement donated, yes.
I I do have a concern, because it is a safety issue, and we're waiting for that funding, that what are we doing right now as a district to handle the safety concerns? So I think that that would be my question, would be, right now, we're waiting for the funding. So from here, since it's a safety issue that's been brought to the committee, and I think, to John's point, I think the conversation about safety is the question here, and it's very subjective. So I think when it's a subjective situation like this, so we do have the fence that was brought to us, and the bees was brought to us, however it was brought to us, how do we handle the safety concerns that are brought to the superintendent, and how do we decide where do we go and to make that decision? I think that's where the bee situation is coming from, is that everything is very subjective. So I think deciding what's going to be done and what's not going to be done, I think, in terms of order, is where the bee conversation came up. My concern right now is the fact that it's not funded yet. So what are we doing for the safety of the children until we can get it funded?
So, if I can just step back for a moment. Being new to the district, taking a tour of the district, one of the things that I did before school started was I had a meet and greet with parents. In our special needs population, we have some very, very complex profiles of students, unlike students we've had in the past, where parents were very vocal, not only about the playground not being secured with a fence, but even to the point where windows were open and that a student could actually go through the window. Very, very quick, very reactionary, very unpredictable. So, of course, the first thing I talked about was supervision, when there's the adult supervision. I, as a parent, of course, understand that, but we all have had those instances where we are perhaps at a grocery store, a fair, at a Walmart, and all of a sudden our little one, where are they? I was very fearful when parents, more than one parent, shared with me some historical information about their children. I then met with the building principals. I asked that the people who will be out on the playground be strategically placed so it wouldn't be up to their free will just to go out to the playground and stand where they felt they should stand, but actually have them strategically placed so many feet apart, which would create almost a human barrier. That, right now, is what's in place. What actually became another concern was, what if particular students that we're talking about actually got drilled? So a decision was made for those children to use the other playground. Now I'm really concerned, because now, instead of being with their peers, they're going to the other side, which opens us up.
Absolutely right.
So I feel as though we have two competing things here. We have an immediate safety issue, because on any given moment, I have those complex kids with emotional dysregulation to a point where they could get by one of those adults, just like my own children have gotten by me in a Walmart. And I also have the other fear that I'm going to have somebody come forward and say that we have violated their civil rights by separating them from their peers and only allowing them access to the other playground. If anybody has ever been through a civil rights investigation, it is not an easy investigation, and it starts from the top down, being the chair of the school committee on down. It is not fun. It is very, very difficult for all parties involved. So I feel as though the fence is an urgency to this, because before you know it, the ground will be freezing. We have to
So I have a few questions for you based on what you're giving us right now. Has the student been, have any of the students been introduced to the playground? To the large playground with their peers? Because it's October 22nd. They've had plenty of time in school, and you just spoke to us an hour ago about how they succeed with their peers. So was there a plan to integrate them into that playground at all?
There has been a plan, almost strategically placing the adults around that perimeter, but the adults themselves are still fearful if these children actually get through.
I just need to ask her a few more questions, because with what you're giving us tonight, which is the first time we're hearing any information on your actual safety concern, how did the determination come to an L-shaped fence? Why aren't we seeking a 4-foot circling the playground enclosure instead of, how are you going to determine which way that child or any child is going to run? I would like to know how that's going to solve the problem, if it's that concerning to you. I just need an answer for that.
Absolutely. So the concern that I'm having is with oncoming vehicles, the child running out in front of the vehicle.
But on the two sides that won't be fenced are driveways. No, there's no guardrails and no driveway, and driveways, so there's vehicle access.
Okay. So it wasn't my recommendation to make a fence this way or make a fence this way. My recommendation was, I feel as though we need a fence, and we need a fence yesterday. However you want to,
So who came to that determination?
design that fence, I feel as though, it was up to people much smarter than I. But how did I come to the determination that I feel as though we need a fence?
No, I'm asking now about the placement of the fence. That was specifically brought to us, so maybe you don't have the answer for that. But I find it very upsetting that the first time you're standing in front of us talking about this, you're telling us that a civil rights suit would come to all of us first when we never had this information on September 24th. The only time a fence was discussed with us. So that's not fair. There are 8 people on this committee that want to make informed decisions, and if we're not given the information that we need to make the decision, we cannot make the right decision, and it's not fair.
Correct. So when the superintendent came and asked for the fence, that it was a safety issue, it's a safety issue first and foremost. My secondary fear is that if the fence does not come to fruition, then we will be looking at a civil rights violation.
Then I think tomorrow, those kids need a different option. And it's being on the playground with their peers. If that's what it is, then that's where those kids go, because that's what's fair. That's what you're telling us.
And that's where those students are, but the adults who are out there are fearful that one or two of those students will bolt at some point.
So do
And
we
although I have almost a human barrier there, just like kids are quick to escape, there is a fear there.
Well, I just want you to know that I've heard from other teachers that, A, they didn't even know there was a problem, and why we would need a fence. And I would think they would know that, if it was that severe on the playground. Other people that have sought me out, not people I've not looked for anybody.
As Mr. Lawyer expressed, because of Ferber, there are certain things about families and students that we're not allowed to share with teachers who don't have these children in their classroom.
But they're out on recess.
Right.
So I'm
They
a
have to
recess
know.
duty teacher, and I have access to all of the students that are out on recess duty. I have to read that file, and I have to sign off on that file saying, I understand every single health issue on those. I have 100 students out on recess duty, 5 of which are special needs, and I have to sign off on every single thing that I see for those students, because it is my responsibility and the 5 teachers that are out there responsibility. So they would be aware if they were out on duty with those students. My question is, do we have ABA trained, do we have people out there that are trained specifically for this social emotional room, or whatever the specific disability, do we have people out there that are trained? That is my concern, because if they're trained, the safety is the concern here. We can talk about the placement of the fence. They're gonna run, Whether you put the fence up L-shaped and they're open, it's gonna be open, and it's gonna be a way out. So I wanna address the safety right now, and the fact that they need to be included, because you're right, it is a legal issue, but we can't be, this is a concern. Like Erin said, it's just brought to us right now that this is going to be a legal concern. So I want to know how it's being addressed so that we don't reach that point.
Exactly. And when Erin is saying that teachers are reaching out to her, I'm not aware that those are teachers that are on the playground, because from my understanding, the building principal has met with the people who are on that playground. I sat with that principal. We came up with everybody almost like cones being strategically placed. So if and when one of these kids bulk and jet, which they are bound to do at some point, that we will be able to make eye contact and be able to go to get that student.
But we have trained specialists out there, so we are doing our part in terms of the safety, that we have trained people with these students, correct?
We do. We have trained people, we have people who are also trained in CPR.
Okay, thank you very much.
But then we also said they don't want the responsibility. They're nervous.
They don't want this one, but
They're fearful. They're fearful, okay.
I'm having my, and I've actually, since this issue is brought up, have gone out and talked to people who actually work in the field, and my daughter being one of them. If you have a wall of people, a double guardrail that Jane and I, at least two people admit, would have difficulty going over, what's a 4-foot fence going to do to stop time? How much more time are you going through? How much time do your aides need to react? If you got a wall of people.
Thank you very much. I would like an answer on who decided the design that was brought to us on what is in need.
That was me.
You were going to say something?
Yeah, I was going to say, I've had the privilege of being a principal in a building with these types of students, okay? Like that. This is a safety issue. It was brought up as a safety issue at the last meeting. Maybe some of the minutia was not there, but it was brought up as a safety issue. The professionals who run your district brought forth a safety issue.
They brought forth a safety issue. and
I am
it was
going to
vendor
ask,
funded.
No, I said that.
okay?
And it will be.
This is something that is needed.
Why is it 4 feet?
We can,
Why is it 4 feet? Why isn't it 6 feet?
It's 5 feet.
Why isn't it, well, it's 5 feet?
it's,
5 feet. That's the price for the 5-foot fence.
we can debate shape, but at this point, school committee has to accept the donation.
There is no
We need it
donation.
in front of
There
us.
is no donation.
I think part of the first
You
meeting
can look
also.
there all you want like that, but there is no donation.
There is.
My understanding when I walked in this room was, at least I was led to believe, that somebody was donating the fence. I now learned that that's not in fact the case, so there is no donation.
Not confirmed.
Yet we are asked to seed soccer fields out of our budget. If it's that severe and it's that much of a safety concern, this should have been on the top of our agenda on September 24th with how much money was needed out of our budget, and it would have been up already. It would have been done. We would not be talking about this 2 meetings later, 6 weeks later. It was definitely brought to us incorrectly.
And part of the holdup in September 24th was not knowing if we were allowed to put a fence or if it was town.
Yeah,
And
you
did that
did-
answer
you had to
too.
get some approval from the town of Blackstone, correct?
We don't have that yet.
But we don't need it.
We do need it.
Well, according to the town of Blackstone, we don't need it.
The town of Blackstone hasn't put it on their agenda, so if they've got approval from it, they don't have it by a formal meeting of the Board of Selectmen under the open meeting laws.
I have a problem with the design of the fence. It's
Yeah,
not
it
going
needs
to
to be
stop any child from leaving that playground. And you have a large playground area, you have a sandbox, and you have hardtop that everyone should have access to, and that's where the fence needs to be. It needs to enclose the playground, and it needs to address the safety concern. The guardrail stops the traffic. We need to keep our kids safe inside the playground. It needs a different design, and what are we gonna do about the other playground? The kids are gonna only get older.
And that guardrail is open in sections by the corner. It's not completely enclosing that playground. Correct.
By the gazebo, yeah.
Yeah,
corner by the
so it's open. I mean, there is access.
Yeah. But I don't think the fence is gonna, I think the fence is.
Well, I guess that's the next
design I
thing, is
saw
where is the
gonna
fence
cut it
going?
off.
Because the fence should actually come on the inside of the sidewalk, too. People
The
shouldn't be able to walk
proposed
with their
fence
kids at recess.
would run contiguous from the inside of the sidewalk around the corner by the gazebo, and then on the inside of the guardrail up the other side.
I think after this discussion, we need to figure out how to actually completely enclose it. Which probably doubles the budget.
Do we
But-
still have the, John, you might know the answer to this, the money that is available to us each year from the town of Blackstone, $10,000?
Yeah.
For the building, upkeep of the building, and have you looked into using that money for that fence?
I guess I will. I can certainly do that.
I always thought that was earmarked for windows and doors and.
I
betterments
I
for
do not know, I
environment.
never knew of it until last
Yeah.
year when Bill brought it up.
Yeah, I thought it was earmarked for building improvements. And the only reason I brought that up with the fence in the town of Blackstone was that we already have a playground over there that nobody's gonna take responsibility for repairing. And under this interpretation of the lease, then apparently the district would be responsible for repairing that, any issues with the playground that's presently existing. Because I always understood there was an issue with taking responsibility. That's why I was so concerned when the folks from Millville wanted to put one here, as to who's gonna be responsible for the maintenance.
Is there any other discussion?
Can I say something, please?
You have to talk during public forum, I'm very sorry. Any other discussion?
So is
So
there
where are
anything
we
we
going?
can enact tonight
We're
then?
waiting for answers. We need
Okay.
more, we need more information.
All right, so
let's
what
break it
precisely is the information we still need then? We need
I
what?
think two of us asked for the design to change. I think we need to know how it's going to be paid for.
What's the cost to the district?
All right.
What's the cost of the district?
All right,
and
all
if
right,
we
hold
can
on,
even do
let's
it?
take this one at a time. So, design change, what, you look like a 360 fence, fully enclosed? That's what you're
Well,
thinking?
if the problem is they're going to run, that's the problem, the safety issue that we're having. The only design that would stop that would be an enclosed playground. If that's
Around the
safety-
entire
If that's
playground.
the safety concern, then we're not actually addressing that concern with an L shape.
Just tighten that.
I mean, we really aren't. We're slowing them down in one direction, but the other direction's wide open. So I think the design is, the reason why we're asking for the design is strictly because the safety issue is talking about the run. So we have to discuss that plan. So that $14,000 is going to be inaccurate. So we need to know how much it's going to cost the district. That is the first question. As a school committee member in budget, that is the first question we have to ask. Will it weigh our decision? Probably not, but we need to know if it can be done, if it has been approved from, I mean, what is Blackstone's role in this? I mean, we need to know that, whether it needs to be on, we need to watch it. I need to be it needs to be on the meeting.
Well, we need it brought to us so we can bring it to Blackstone Selectmen. And that has not properly happened in that order. A letter was sent, then the letter was stopped, and I don't believe it ever reached their meeting, as John is saying. So
The design and the cost of the fence. is
So at
gonna
this
help us
point, I
make
think
these
tonight,
decisions.
what we could do is send a letter to the town of Blackstone, similar to what was sent on September 22nd, before our meeting, letting them know that we need, we have a need, and we happen to have a Blackstone selectman here who's,
So, Alan, did you want to say something?
I just wanted to ask for clarification, and I will try and get the information the committee needs.
Yep. So you're looking for design?
Design
you're
of the
looking
fence.
for cost. And maybe I would also ask, like, a timeline, what their response time might be, and, how late in the year can they do it? I'd imagine they can go pretty late, I would guess.
I actually just hired these folks to put a chain link fence around my entire backyard. And they were, when I hired them, they were 6 weeks out. They put it up fast. I mean, they put it up, 2 days is a pretty decent, but I was told last year, because I was considering before last winter, was they can put it up until frost isn't an issue, snow's an issue.
I'm sorry, but because I asked the parent to wait till public forum, I'm going to ask you.
That was my next question.
Thank you.
All right, so
I'm sorry.
I'll wait till.
We'll move public forum up before our school committee discussion.
So a design of the fence and total price, and then a letter to the selectmen. Okay.
Is it possibly already worded in our release? I guess it's something we can review to see if this is something part of the lease already.
Well, I think we have to get the cost, because if it bumps over that price.
I've looked at the lease, and
Is it 20 or 25,000?
it's, well, I have to look at the actual number. When I saw the 25, I'm not certain. I'm relying on the fact that Alan looked at the lease and it says 25.
Capital.
But that's for maintenance. That's not for actual modification of the property.
Kitchen floor here, it was a $20,000.
Yeah, in Millville, it's 20.
It's the same on both. So I do think it is
Oh,
20.
Okay.
Well,
I was told yesterday in Millville that, because
It was what, Millville, you said?
Because it came in 23.
So it was 20?
Yeah.
It's 20 in Millville.
it was told that yesterday,
What were you told?
that it was 20
20.
from Millville, but I can't speak for Blackstone.
Yes, it's online too. Okay, so any other questions about the fence? Do we need to schedule another meeting before November to address it?
Let me see where we go, and then we have 48 hours to post it.
He still has, we're still on the report of the superintendent.
Do you want to move?
The last, I'm sorry.
When you know what you're saying, swing it.
Yeah, do you want to?
There.
I think he should finish until the next meeting.
I'm sorry.
Move the discussion of the district's 3 to 5 year plan until our next meeting.
That's fine.
I want a motion, right?
Move to take the discussion of district's 3 to 5 year plan and put it on the next agenda.
Motion made by John, seconded by Wendy. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? So we're moving the discussion of district's 3 to 5 year plan to tentatively right now, November 12th. And now I'm going to move our next public forum up before school committee. The school committee section, does anyone have any reason not to?
I think it's a good idea.
Okay. So now we have public forum. Anyone that would like to address us? If you could just say your name and your town.
Yeah, Dan Keefe, Blackstone. I've been following along with the fence thing since, for the last month or so. And I do a lot of traveling throughout the course of a week. And since this started, I've been going by several elementary schools. And I noticed most of them that have a main drag do have a fence between the roadway and the school. And it just L-shapes around on a lot of them to keep the kids from jetting out into the street anyway until they can get caught up, is my impression on it. I'm a lifelong resident of Blackstone. I went to the John F. Kennedy School when there was no guardrail, not much of a playground, and a lot more trees in the area. And I happen to have a pretty good advisor on the history of that school, seeing that my father was a principal there for many, many years. And this kind of discussion came up at the time in the 90s when the guardrail was going in, which was donated by the state, and the school in town had to pay the labor. What concerns me is the fact that it was initially brought up a month or so ago, and the immediate concern of the safety, whether it's one student or 100 students. We all are aware that something needs to be done. And if people are concerned with the way it's gonna look, what's the alternative if something happens without a fence there? You know, and what are we gonna be looking at then? As a member of the Board of Selectmen, I will support the fence. And I'll comfortably say that tonight, because I'm concerned for the safety of all the kids that visit that playground, whether they're from town or not.
Thank you.
And I hope, and I understand this board's concerns, but I hope we can, you know, see eye to eye on this to at least get the fence up and running. If we put this off to more meetings, that's that much more time for something, for a chance for something to go wrong, so.
Are you supportive of taking the $10,000 and applying it to the fence from the town of Blackstone?
Well, I am not going to speak for the board of.
Well, no, I'm talking about, you spoke for yourself before, I'm asking
Yeah.
that question yourself.
I don't know how the process works. I got a feeling that if this board in front of me approves this fence, the donations for the fence. I mean, if you approve this fence based on receiving donations tonight, I believe the donations will be in within a week's time. And you can make it contingent on the donations. If you don't get the donations, the fence doesn't go up. You know, you can have another meeting about financing it at the next meeting. But, I mean, it's, you know, it's the safety of these kids, first and foremost. And I'll stand here, yeah.
Can I just interrupt? I think all of us agree that the safety of the children are first. I
Right.
think it's the manner in which we receive the information. And I think we need to be clear on that because we just got this information. So I think it's important to understand that we understand the safety and we understand the importance of it, but we're just getting it. So I think it's important to keep that in mind. We wanted the information, we asked for the information. That's what we wanted. We are on a committee to get information, to receive information, to make informed decisions. And that, as a committee, is all we're talking about right now, is getting that information. I think the safety, with no doubt, there is a question, there's no question. But, you know, when I hear, you know, Mrs. Braverman say, you know, it's a safety issue on running. You know, in my head, I'm thinking, okay, well, now it needs to be enclosed. So it's not a question on whether we think we know what's in the best interest of the children. It's just, we need the information to make that informed decision.
And I agree. I don't want to say that you didn't have this board didn't have the safety of the children. And I'll tell you, when I happened to see the superintendent the day he dropped off the letter to the town hall, and it was on, the town hall was closed, and so it couldn't be put on the agenda for the following selectmen's meeting because there wouldn't have been enough time. And then when the selectmen, the town administrator was, the superintendent was told that we need approval from this board before the selectmen can move forward on approving the fence. So I think there was some delays between
Who told you that?
What's that?
Who told you that? Who told you that you needed our approval first? Because we just dealt with the sprinkler system at the same complex that you folks had a lawyer draft.
Before we agreed on a fence, before it would come to the Board of Selectmen, the school was asking for a fence. The school was asking for a fence. We weren't asking to put a fence on the school. The school was asking for a fence. We wanted the school committee to be on board before it would come to the Board of Selectmen.
Right.
The school was asking for the fence. The town wasn't asking to put the fence on the school, on the school's property. And the irrigation, the town was asking to put the soccer fields on the school property.
Right.
Yes.
Right.
So that's the difference there. So you folks leased the property, with the landlord. You came to us to, you know, this board would say, we think we need a fence on it, we all agree. Can the Board of Selectmen approve that? And at that time, then we make that decision. When we came to the irrigation, we were asking your permission, your blessing to put the irrigation.
No, I disagree with that. We were trying to, and I don't want to get in a big discussion, but we were trying to figure out who's going to be responsible for the maintenance, care,
But it was
removal
brought
of
to
it.
us because it was on the town meeting
Yeah.
warrant.
But we
So-
wanted to avoid a similar situation as we had with the playground. That's why it was brought to, that's why we discussed it procedurally and how it would be corrected. So legally, we went forward in a proper fashion, but one doesn't make, it's your building. We're going to make a modification of that building by erecting a fence. We have to, under the terms of the lease, get your permission first before we go ahead and do a modification.
And we would
So-
get your permission. We would,
You're
as
not
a
gonna get our-
board, you would present it to our board.
Right, but we would have to have approved that to go to
Yeah,
you.
and that's what our board is waiting for.
Yes.
For this board to unanimously agree, you want to put a fence on, a vote to put a fence in, and then our board will vote accordingly.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
When is Blackstone's next meeting?
Dan, do you know?
Do you know?
When's the next meeting for Blackstone?
Tuesday night.
Okay.
Tuesday night, yeah, next Tuesday, the 27th.
Okay, thank you very
So,
much.
Depending on the outcome tonight, I
Yeah,
can
that's
put it on the
good.
agenda tomorrow.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Adam, did you want to speak?
Yes.
If you could just tell us your name and your town, please.
My name's Valerie Vadney. I'm from Millville. Sorry, I have a cold, so. I'm here today. I'm actually for the fence. My son has actually bolted from this playground. Sorry.
I do want to let you know that you don't have to
I'm
speak
sorry.
about your child in particular.
No, that's
You don't
fine.
have to.
I'm okay talking about my child. They have actually sent home a letter to the parents, asking the parents not to drive by and slow down and say hi to their children, because it's veering them towards the road, okay? I have driven by the school multiple times, yesterday actually, to drop papers off. There was about 60 kids out there, 2 teachers. So you're telling me that 2 teachers can keep every child safe out there? It's gonna take one time for one child to go this way, one to go that way, and who are they going after? So to me, as a parent, you guys are all gonna sit here and wait until a child, something happens before a fence goes up or someone's concerned. I have personally, the beginning of this year, because my son got moved over to that school, brought it to Loretta's and the superintendent about the fence. So I've been talking about this since day one, okay? I actually wrote all of you emails. I've actually spoken to one of you on the phone and through emails about this. Okay, I'm a very concerned parent, and there are many parents that are concerned. I have talked about it on the Facebook. I have even put up a petition about this. There are many parents behind me. And I'm worried that this keeps getting dragged on and dragged on. And if, I'm gonna tell you, if my son gets through, you guys think you have a problem now? There'll be a big problem.
Well, I don't think we need threats.
That's
No,
not
but
fair.
I'm saying,
That's not fair.
I'm saying.
This is procedural. I think you need to
I
understand that
understand.
this is very procedural.
But I feel like every time, this has already been brought up, and it's just
Once.
getting dragged.
Once, and we were
It's
just
getting
told that
dragged.
there's a wall of
But if
people
it's a
sitting there.
safety issue.
Twice. This has come to this committee, and it came on September 24th. And I'm sorry, Madam Chairman, I'd like to make a motion. I would like to make a motion.
We're going to wait.
No, until
our
she's
public
done,
forum
that's
is
fine.
over.
When we get back to us, I would like to make a motion.
If this is such a safety issue, which it is, why is everyone waiting? Are you gonna wait
Well,
until something
I do
happens?
want to beg to differ on the supervision on that playground, because there is never a day that those teachers don't have the kids, whether they're in the building or outside that building, at the forefront of their mind, and they are watching over those kids, and I would find it very hard to believe that there were ever 2 teachers on duty.
There absolutely was, and the reason I didn't take a picture is because of the laws, because that would be me taking pictures of children. I went to the school yesterday, I had to drop off papers, and I saw the children. That's not the
A
first time.
fence is not going to take the place of adult supervision. And
Absolutely, no, I don't.
I would
But
be
it's going
against that.
to, it's going to enclose the students into a safe place. Our children should be able to go out to recess, out to the playground, no matter if they go to school or not, and be safe. Not only am I worried about people running, what about people coming in and snatching a child? You're telling me four teachers watching all of these students? How easy is it for someone to walk into the playground, grab a child, and leave? How easy is it for a stray animal to walk in, bite a child,
That's
and
still gonna
leave?
happen with the design of this fence. That's
Okay,
still-
so let's do an enclosed fence. But I'm saying you guys keep pushing this off,
No.
and what if?
That's not
Yes,
fair.
but that is what's happening, because I'm saying you need more information. But shouldn't you guys be voting on, yes, there should be a fence, or no, there shouldn't be a fence?
We oversee budget, money,
Okay,
and policy,
okay.
and we have not been told where the money's coming from. And everything that comes to us that needs funding, we see where it comes from. That's
Okay.
it. You're right. There's a safety concern, you need a fence, tell us how you're getting it. That's our job. That's our job. And it has not been brought to us. That is not your fault.
But as a safety concern, isn't the school liable for this amount? It doesn't matter what it's gonna cost. The fence, you are all saying, you're all sitting here saying that you are all concerned. It's a safety thing. I hear maybe one person saying it's not a safety thing, or they're not as concerned. The school has been around for a long time. I get it, but times have changed. The world is much different. And it's gonna take one child, and then every single person's gonna say, well, we should have done it sooner. We should have done it, and it didn't get done. So we're just gonna keep pushing it off another day, another week, another month, and what's gonna happen? The child's gonna get through, someone's gonna take a child. I'm looking at it from a parent point of view. I've gone by the school a million times, I will purposely drive by. If the principal is sending home a letter to parents telling them, please don't slow down and wave to your child, because they're worried about a child leaving to go towards their parents, that right there is proving that teachers out there is not enough. They have sent home that letter.
Thank you.
And I'm gonna get up and
Thank you. Go ahead. Please give us your name and the town you're from.
Esther Cody, first grade teacher, John F. Kennedy School in Blackstone. I've been there for 28 years. I'm not disagreeing that there may be safety issues, but I've been there for 28 years. On my watch, there has never been a child on my watch that is bolted. You driving by at recess time is a distraction to me. So when you're driving by slowly, I'm watching you because I don't know who you are. And I don't know what you're up to when you're driving by. So yes,
I drove at normal speed.
there are many parents that come by, they drive by slowly. It's a distraction to me. It gets my eyes off of the students that I'm supposed to be. But, and if there's a stray person walking on the sidewalk, I'm right there, right in front of that person, walking the length of the property.
You're concerned about that person mostly.
And my other colleagues are watching the children. I've been there for 28 years. There have been people, there have been 2 teachers on duty. We strategically place ourselves. I can place myself in the corner of that blacktop, and I have full view of every single child on that playground.
So if one child goes this way, one goes this way, which one are you going for?
There's 2 of us out there, one of us is gonna
And
get
both
one.
of you are seeing the same person at the same time.
Yeah.
What's that? I'm sorry,
You just need to-
but, okay.
You have the floor.
Okay, I do have the floor. But, I mean, is it a safety issue? In my point of view, I'm not seeing it right now. Children can bolt. Am I for the fence if we can get one? Absolutely. And closing it in, that's a whole other set of problems. With the world that we live in today, I mean, if there's someone that is out there and they get inside, now I'm concerned about how we're getting inside the building with that person inside the fence with us. Slowing the child down, it doesn't take much to climb a fence. I think I'm pretty athletic at times as well. And that guardrail, I was talking about it today, you have to jump into the middle and then jump over the side. So that's going to slow the child down as well. I just take offense when, you know, the teachers are doing their jobs. The teachers are out there looking for every possible thing that could go wrong with you know, playground supervision. I think I do a great job of making sure that all the kids stay safe. That is our job. And whatever this board can do to support us in our, you know, job to keep the kids safe, that's great. But right now, me, in my 28 years of teaching at the district, has never had a problem out on the playground.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And I want to make a statement, just to make it very clear, that myself on this committee does not think there is a lack of adult supervision on that playground with the teachers and the aides that are out there at all. And I don't want any person in that building to feel like what they're doing isn't sufficient when you're on duty. So thank you. Any other public forum?
Can I just say, I wasn't trying to attack the teachers, because I think the teachers do an amazing job, but they are only human. And humans will make mistakes, or they won't see something, and something could happen. Perfect example. Can you come
Okay,
up
you
to
have
the-
to come up
you
to
gotta
the
come up
microphone
thing.
if you're gonna speak.
We're live, so people need to hear. Whatever you want, but the people that are listening need to hear it.
Okay.
That's the only reason why we're asking.
No, I was not attacking the teachers at all, because I believe my son gets fantastic education there. They have done fantastic things for him, but everyone is only human. And mistakes can be made, or people can't see things. Maybe their vision is blurred by another student, and something could happen. You know, everyone says, perfect example, like the Titanic. No one thought it ever could sink. It sank. A kid can run. A kid can go underneath that guardrail. They can get there if they want to. My son's fast. He has ran through the whole school with all teachers trying to get him. Through a whole school. It has happened. So I know that kids can go. That's all I'm gonna say about
Thank
it.
you. And any other public forum? We've already finished our discussion, but I know where Jane was going. There are a lot of things in our district that need to happen, and they all take money. So we as a committee need to prioritize what those are. And there's other things we're not compliant with. John wanted to bring up the bees. I'm going to bring up the high school not being compliant and the money we need to spend there, and that has not been brought to us. So there are many things that we
Excuse me,
need-
Madam Chairman, but I have mentioned that high school many
It has
times,
not
and
been
I
brought
have
to us to
said
fix.
that, well,
We've talked about it.
we have talked about it, and it was supposed to be in the review that we had done, and in the 3 to 5 year plan that we're developing, so yes,
The
it
3 to 5 year
has.
plan needs to happen now because
Well,
there's
I
students
agree.
there.
I agree. And I've brought that up a million times, so to say it's never been brought to us is not true, because I brought it up before some of the students were even there. So I feel like, I feel like we have the ability to address an issue as it came before us, and I think we've got some information. I think we get more information as time goes on. I think there are people called certified playground inspectors who deal with playground safety, and maybe we need to, as a district, hire one to look at what's the best fencing. But the plain fact of the matter is, I believe that we need to start the process to install a safety barrier, and it's not a guardrail, and I believe it's a fence, but maybe there's something else that exists. And so I would like to make a motion as a school committee that we support putting a safety barrier or fence around the playground at JFK pending donations that support the installation of that fence.
And the material.
And I would love to second that.
Well, I want to clarify what that
And
motion
material,
is.
yeah.
Okay.
So as no
100%.
expense to the district. No expense to the district.
Okay, motion made by Jane and seconded by Steve. Monique, did you get what that motion was? Discussion on the motion.
I just think what we're doing here is you're reacting, you're shooting from the hip. You've got a motion that is going to be a vote from this committee as to what? As to what? You haven't got permission from the Board of Selectmen. You can't modify the playground without that permission. You don't have the funding for it. but you're gonna vote on something without having all the information, I'm not doing it, because you know what? I do value safety of the children, okay? I value safety, but I also value up-to-date textbooks, and I do understand the problems at the high school, which are significant. We have an inability for a person, without going outside the school, to traverse one side of the building to the other who has a handicap, okay? That's a serious
Every
issue in
day
my
he
mind.
has to go outside.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay? But I don't devalue safety. I work, not at this particular school, but I do recess duty, and I watch children at playgrounds, and I watch children use parking lots as playgrounds on Route 122, which is a far more busy road than the one next to JFK on either side. And I'm hearing all kinds of information. I'm hearing a wall of people. I'm hearing 2 people. I'm hearing the fence is going to be an L. I'm hearing it's going to be circular. I will not support a just gut reaction, just doing it to bandstand in front of the cameras to do what people think we want at that particular moment. I want to explore all the information. This said that we had donations. We're making it so much contingent, we're taking a vote for what? So I can't support just a, grandstand type vote on an issue without definitive facts and information as to who's going to pay for it and where the money's going to come. Because quite frankly, if we make the request under the lease, it's quite possible Blackstone may be responsible for it as an improvement.
Any other discussion?
Can you read the motion again, please?
And support a safety barrier or fence pending donations.
Pending donations, period, right?
Of labor and materials.
Of labor and
Right,
materials?
with no expense to the school district.
Do we have to add approval by town of Blackstone?
Well, it has to.
Right, do we have to add that to a motion, or that's understood?
Well, there's nothing understood in a motion. So you can put your list of contingencies in this motion for it to be applicable. Otherwise, it's not applicable.
So we can put
In my
pending approval
estimation.
from the Board of Selectmen, Blackstone Board of Selectmen, too. You could ask to add them.
Okay. Going to take a vote by hands. All those in favor? Okay, any opposed?
And when can we get this information? I know Board of Selectmen has a meeting on Tuesday, but I think we need to know what's going on.
You asked for a design of the fence.
Cost, I believe, too?
Yeah, redesign it so it's enclosed, and I guess that would result in an updated quote.
Or not?
Can I say something? Because I think Esther Cody had a very good point.
did.
You're going to have a full enclosure here. We don't just have a handful of children. We have a group of children. So I want to make a motion. I'm going to make a motion that if we could acquire funding, that it include a study to assess the proper fence / design / how it's going to be actually work. Because let's not just do, from the hip kind of. So my motion is that we not allow anything to be put up without that donation funding, including a study, make a determination as to what's actually going to facilitate the multiple purposes that we've had to do, including child snatching, a runner, animals, and the various other issues that have been raised with regard to the children that are located on the playground that's been there for 47 years.
Is there a second to John's motion?
I would second a study, because I think we need
Well,
professionals
I
to
think-
tell us what the best option is. I
So-
think
motion made by John, second by Wendy, and open for discussion. Jane, does that go along with your playground safety outside company analysis, in a sense? You mentioned there are companies that do the playground safety.
But are we, can I ask you to clarify your motion, John?
Certainly. I just am looking
Would that
for,
mean that who would pay for that study?
it would be through the donations prior to the erection of the barrier or fence.
I think that would be hard for us to find.
Can we just amend Jane's motion to include an analysis from an outside company on the best placement?
I mean, I'm all for that analysis and that study. I just think you would be hard pressed to find a donation.
And timely. I mean, they're adding a lot of time, I would think.
Well,
But how are we
actually,
gonna address that?
Well, but I agree with John there.
You can
If
get
we're gonna do it,
companies.
we need to do it right.
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 To do it right, we need to address all of the needs that would exist. Because if you just circle the whole thing and where are your gates and can you attach to it edge of
Right,
the school?
right.
And can people get into
Mhm.
the school then? And so, yeah, I think, design certainly is an issue. And if that takes time, that's due diligence. I mean, that's.
you can
what,
get the studies done relatively quickly.
Yeah, but I think if we're gonna have a study, that's maybe something we have to pay for. I don't know.
Mrs. Braverman, do you have any, have you dealt with this in the past, having to put up a fence and know of, an idea of where to head with the study?
I actually have identities of companies that do just that. They're out there.
So can we move forward with that motion with an amendment
Yep.
to put the study in there?
So John would need to.
That's
Or-
what I'm paying for.
I can get that too.
Name and where you're
Just say
from.
your name.
Stefania Spas, Millville. Millville Playground is enclosed with a gate.
No, that's just for preschool.
But I'm
Millville
saying,
does not
but
have a
like-
playground.
So
The
whatever
kids get in
they have
trouble
in
for running
back,
into the woods.
But the other children in the school use that playground, correct?
No,
No.
Is it
that
only
is
preschool?
preschool only,
Preschool.
half-day, 2 and 3 day kid, 3 days a week, that's it. No
Well, my
other
son goes 5 days a week all day,
preschool.
yes, but it's not 2
That's the
days a week.
preschool playground only.
So,
actually use that.
No, they do not.
No,
No, they do not.
No.
They absolutely do not.
Special ed classes, they have a mixture of preschool and kindergarten together, and they actually do go out together to the playground.
That's considered a preschool. That is a preschool class, preschool playground.
so it doesn't matter that it's enclosed.
It's enclosed because that's that is a written standard. And that fence is not 5 feet high.
The only reason why I'm saying is because, my son goes there, I see
Yeah.
that it's enclosed, and
They're not-
obviously
they don't
fire
have
safety has
recess.
to come through, police, God forbid something they have to be able to make their
Yeah.
way through.
That is not recess. That is a completely different program. Millville does not have a playground. They have a field. And anyone could be in those woods. If we really want to start talking about all of that,
No, but
anyone could be in the
But I
woods.
just wanted to clarify, that's all I wanted to know, because when they said about someone getting in because it's enclosed, that God forbid they had to get out, how are you gonna get out if that's enclosed?
Right.
It's, even though it's two different things, but it's kind of like the same thing. If
Well,
someone got
one
into
is
the
law.
fence.
The one, the preschool one is, that's a law.
it's put up by the standards
Okay.
to have a preschool
I was just
program.
curious, I guess if someone got in, how they're supposed to
Mhm.
go out too.
And that fence is much lower. It's not 5 feet
No,
out
I know, I
here.
think it's about 4, but you
Yeah.
can kind of see over, I'm 5, so I definitely can't see over that. So I just curious about how pathway, if someone got into that. how they're supposed to
Unfortunately,
go
there's
out.
nobody here from Millville that could give us that information, that's there on a daily basis. But like I said, it's not recess. Those kids are not out there on a scheduled time. They go out when the teachers take them out. Where to get into those discussions of people jumping fences and snatching kids, those people probably did their homework and they knew what time recess was, and, I mean, we're not going there.
No, I was just curious more because, I'm unaware that, the preschool, thank you for telling me, clarifying, but I just got concerned with the enclosure, and when she said if someone got in, how are they supposed to get out? Just curious on that. Thank you.
Thank you. Right now, we have John's motion on the floor.
We have 2.
No, we voted on James.
Oh, yeah.
And now we're talking about possibly just amending that one.
Just amended to add that the that it include a study as to the proper configuration and type of barrier/fence that should be erected.
And will there be gates so that it is open after school hours?
Well, I think that's what the
That's
study-
part of,
Yeah.
okay.
And I think actually, if you call the carrier, the insurance carrier, because what we've done tonight is pretty much created a toehold for any potential suit for any injury on any of our playgrounds, so we should be happy about that. But what we need to do is we call our carrier, sometimes the carrier will assist with respect to it concerning liability issues.
So we need to remove your motion, but we already voted on yours. We can't amend it. We have to strike it. We already voted. So we need a new motion to amend.
Yeah, I move to amend
But-
to add to the fence issue.
You're amending your motion.
Yes.
Okay.
The fence issue that, and include a provision whereby a study is performed concerning the configuration, size, and type of fence/barricade that will address the issues at JFK, A.F. Maloney Playground.
Motion made by John. Is there a second? Second by Georgette. Any discussion?
I still have the question, how we paying for this stuff?
Do you have an answer for that?
First, have to find out what the cost will be. Based upon the design from the consultant. And then that would give us the answer.
Yep. Yeah, you have to get the size, configuration, type.
Any other discussion? And all those in favor, we will take a hand vote. Sorry? Did you have something to talk
No.
about?
No.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All right.
Thank you, no opposed. We are moving on to school committee, part of the agenda, superintendent's evaluation. I'm looking for a motion to move this to November 12th.
So moved.
Second.
Motion made by Wendy, second by John.
I'm sorry, Aaron, you didn't. vote
Sorry.
to do that.
A motion to move the superintendent evaluation under the school committee agenda to our November 12th meeting.
Yeah.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Another one. And report of the assistant superintendent.
Curriculum update and PD update. We had our PD day October 9th. It was well attended, and the teachers got a lot out of it. For the first time this year, we started using TeachPoint to track and have teachers sign up for the professional development. That is a new feature that became available. And part of that was teachers doing individual projects, which I mentioned at our last meeting. At this point, they're handing in evidence, teachers are giving feedback, and we're finalizing the professional development certificate piece of that. Google training continues. We have a three-part series that's being offered at 2:30 for the high school and middle school students. We are going to be offering another set of Google trainings for at the elementary dismissal time at about 3:30. We are working also with X2 Aspen. They're going to be our curriculum mapping vehicle. Process of setting that up, getting the forms all set up, identifying building leaders in each building to help get that curriculum mapping piece up to date. Hopefully, we'll be ready to maybe start in December or January with that, with the hope of having the maps that we had pretty much about halfway done before the carpet got pulled out from us by June. Our next math training is next Wednesday. That is going to be focused on offering model lessons so the teachers can watch lessons being presented, and then doing follow-up discussions after viewing the lessons. Update on the wireless project. We did, as you do know, we did get the funding, the E-rate funding. We're hoping to begin. We met with Harbor Networks. They are in the process of ordering materials and, you know, switches and all the stuff that needs to go in. The challenge we're going to have going forward is a lot of, we had hoped to have the funding secured by the end of June so that we could do a lot of the noisy work, if you will, over the summer. That's actually not a possibility at this point, so we're hoping to begin late December during the vacations. A lot of that noisy work that would be disruptive to the educational process is going to take part after school and during vacation periods with a target end date of May 1st.
Fully installed?
Fully installed. Update on Chromebooks, as you know, that unfortunately was one of the budget items that was lost out of last year's budget. So we are hoping to put that into next year's budget unless there's no snow or something funky that happens between now and May. The new website, the migration from the old website to the new website has gone very well. It's about 90% up. You know, as anything new, you end up with a few things to trip over as time goes on. Right now, we're still finalizing some of the forms that mainly staff used, but 95% of it is up. The next part of this project will be our technology director, Osiris Gonzalez, actually training people in the building and building principals how to manage the school sites. And that is it for me.
Thank you. Any questions for Dr. Thompson? Aspen. Will it be easy to transfer everything they built last year into Aspen?
No.
Okay.
No. The problem, the good part is that the conversations are done and people have documents. The bad news was when Edwin disappeared, it was all in PDF format, and that is not a format where you can just take the data and load it into something else. So it has to be re-entered. You know, we went with Aspen because it's a platform that's familiar to the teachers. They use it currently, so they wouldn't have to necessarily learn, you know, and it would show up with all of their other stuff. So it's a similar tool to what they have used. But I'm a little particular, so I'm kind of battling with them because I would like it set up the way I'd like it set up. So we're.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
And school committee forum. Wendy?
Nope, good.
Tara?
No.
Steve?
Just like to congratulate Griffin on getting his superintendent's award and wish the band a lot of success. They have a lot of big competitions coming up, and good luck in New York City.
John?
You know, I just want to say this because the impression is that somehow I'm adamantly opposed. I would ask that safety procedure with respect to the school be put on the agenda for discussion.
So every agenda have a safety?
Well, I think that what we need to be able to discuss and have a genuine conversation is how Alan, our superintendent, is being made aware at the various facilities of any safety issues that exist. And I'd like to know if that is in fact some type of procedural. So I'd ask that it be put on the agenda as a topic of discussion, so we don't, you know, get bogged down. I'm not opposed to, and I don't want to see anybody injured or hurt, but what I do want to do is avoid what has happened in the past, which is shooting from the hip and procedural quagmires that have been created by not properly following procedure to have projects done. Projects can proceed just as efficiently if done properly, but I have an issue with the Board of Selectmen saying, no, it's you, no, it's you, and we got two fingers going back and forth. They own the building, okay? We've gone through this with the irrigation system, regardless of who wanted to do what to what. We had two lawyers create a document which has never come to fruition, but that's the way we procedurally decided to handle it going forward to avoid the playground issue that was, it's not mine, it's not mine, it's not mine. I don't want that to circumvent or delay safety issues, but this is a municipal or a district issue, a regional school district issue, and a municipal issue that needs to be addressed properly to go forward. And the project then needs to be done properly, as opposed to coming up with a configuration that may not address all the issues. And the cost and funding of it needs to be addressed properly. So, because, you know what, you can have the knee-jerk reaction you do today and say, I'm in favor, but you know what, in April, when we take the floor at the town meeting, see how happy they are when they're gonna pay the taxes for the expenditures by the district or by any other portion of the municipal government. So I wanna make sure that the taxpayers know what they're paying for and that we sit and do it the right way, that's all. And I want to be clear, because there was, and I'm hoping I'm not that person, because I'm not trying to come across that way. I'm over the top on safety, okay? But I think that we just need to do it right, that's all. That's, yeah, I just wanted to say that.
So based on that, what I think I would like to recommend is the weekly update we get from the superintendent every week is we'll add a safety concerns to that, and then we can make a decision from there if it's something we need to bring to our agenda. But that way we're getting it every Friday, not every other week at a meeting.
That's good.
I think the communication, we've set that template up with things that we felt we needed and weren't getting, or needed consistently. So I think adding it to that would give us more communication. I don't know how you feel about that.
No, I think that makes sense.
But that way it's not coming here every single time. We can take it from there. If it needs to be on the agenda, we have time, because we don't do that until Monday. So I'll add that to the template. Georgia?
I agree with John. I think there's a valid point there. I'm glad that we made the motions tonight, and you need a chance.
Thank you. Jane?
I would like to thank the leadership that came out tonight to present their ideas to us. I think there are good things happening in our schools. I think the results of the testing is positive. We've got more work to do, but it's quite positive. I would love to know who that other student is who scored the 800. I know we recognized Griffin a lot this year, and we've, mentioned him, but I'd like to know who the other one is so that we can,
Andy Lucier.
Well, congratulations to Andy Lucier. That's
We should invite him to a meeting.
a great achievement, and I hope he gets a lot of recognition.
Thank you, Jean. And I don't have anything. So we're going to upcoming meetings. Thursday, November 12th. I believe we're moving back to the middle school. And any agenda items, please send them before the Monday before. I'm sorry, Steve, what was the student's name?
Andy Lucier.
And was it in that?
Yes.
Okay. And now
Mr.
we...
Goldberg, I sent you an email with similar thoughts. So.
I am I'm looking for a motion to move into an executive session for discussion of Unit A negotiations. And we will return just for, we will adjourn from there. So I need a motion with a roll call.
Make a motion to move to executive session for Unit A negotiations.
Second.
Motion made by Jane, second by Wendy, and roll call John. Steve?
Yes.
Carol?
Yes.
Wendy?
Yes.
Erin? Yes. Jane?
Yes.
And Georgia. Thank you.
Oh.